This episode is brought to you by our lovely sponsors, Portion, or natural single protein dog food snack company. Go to portion.com.au. Enter Muscle Talks 25 for your first order, Muscle Talks 10 for all continued orders. Also, our premium Australian supplement company, Primabolics, best protein and pre-workout, and more on the market. Go to primabolics.com.au using a fabulous discount code, Muscle Talks 15. So let's get on with the podcast.
And so Joe would rarely come down to the gym. When he did, it was great. But so he didn't see the people I saw coming through the door. We had, on a good Monday, we had 2,000 people coming through the gym.
Wow.
My office was right next door. So, and the front counter guys would call and say, Ed, there's this big kid over here looking for a membership, but and they would actually be my scouts. They would actually encourage me to give somebody a free membership if they knew they couldn't afford it.
You don't manage them; they come in your home. And you mentioned, I guess, the bit they're supposed to take photos at your gym and promote your gym. What did you get out of all this, Ed?
Well, as I said in my book, I got to play God. I changed a life.
Wow! Wow!
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean, he was going to be living on the street when I met him, and he did make $1 million, and he has an incredible story to tell his kids, his family, at some point in his life. For a few $1,000s, I could change someone's life.
Yeah.
My entire investment in John Cena is probably under $6,000.
Wow.
Look at the lives he's changing, with his, being a superhero or a role model for so many people.
What do you think? Was Lee one of your favorites or one of your?
Well, certainly in terms of, star quality or being, the greatest bodybuilder ever.
Out of all the Olympian winners, we can go as far back as you want to most recent. Who do you reckon is the number one?
Well, I still like Jay. Background right there, that building is the last project I worked on as an architect or for an architectural firm in LA in 1985. It was used in the first Die Hard movie, of Nakatomi Plaza with Bruce Willis.
No way. Is that really?
So if you watch, it's, Die Hard is a lot of people's favorite Christmas movie. Oh. So, I'm in my office and my receptionist, who was right outside, started screaming. And I said, what's wrong? What's happening? And she says, oh, there's Keanu Reeves. And
he was once a merit badge away to becoming an Eagle Scout. Instead, 40 years later, selling the gym chain for $44 million. 535 ended up on his couch. You could also believe it was a refugee racket, an illegal refugee racket, possibly. Is he the ultimate warrior, or is the ultimate warrior made by him? Jay Cutler, John Cena, Lee Priest, Rich Payne, even Callum Van Mogger. Architect, then got laid off. It was actually bought for $100,000. I said $50,000. But that he did need to bring up the $50,000. 4,500 square meters to 26,000 square meters. From one gym to 535 gyms. No one died on steroids. Millennials and Gen Ys need to get off their phones. They are missing all the opportunities by not engaging. Please help me welcome. You won't find your horse's head in your bed, but you might find your kidney belt and dumbbells, maybe. The godfather of bodybuilding, Ed Connors.
Thank you for the introduction, Stephen.
You're welcome. How are you? So tell us again, tell everyone where you're at. Yeah. Where are we?
I am in Century City, which is actually an area that was formerly the 20th Century Film Company's back lot. It was turned into an office development in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually in the background right there. That building is the last project I worked on as an architect or for an architectural firm in LA in 1985. Mm-hmm. I bought Gold's Gym with my two partners in 79, but I led really 3 lives for 6 years. I didn't quit being an architect until working as an architect until 1985. So that was the last project. It was for Fox. It's called Fox Plaza. It's a 34-story office building.
So tell me, I've always been fascinated by architects. Where do you start? When they come to you and you're about to put a building together, where does your pen go first? Where does your mind go first? What's the first thing? Do you think of the car park, the foundations, like the whole thing? I want to know where it starts. Where does it start?
It starts with a program.
Yep.
This client wanted so many square feet of office space, and he initially wanted 2 towers, but Century City has already 2 sets of 2 towers, so I didn't want to build a 3rd set. In fact, I would have loved for this building to be 60 stories high, but 34 stories gave him the amount of office space he wanted. Mm-hmm. But this is back in the day when 30,000 square feet in one floor was considered ideal, where you could get a typical company on one floor. So you're looking at 34 floors stacked on top of each other at about 30,000 square feet.
Okay. Well, okay. Starts with, so I guess it's what they want to achieve, and then you've got to do all the mathematics around that, I guess.
Yes, they don't always know what they want to achieve. I mean, the client here was Marvin Davis, long since dead, but he bought 20th Century Fox Studios and then started basically taking it apart, including developing some of the land. Mm-hmm. So he wanted, I think, initially wanted 2 office buildings rather than one, kind of hedging his bet. Mm-hmm. He thought he could get one leased and then build the other one, but we convinced him to build the entire building initially, and it was pretty much fully leased when the building opened. It was used in the first Die Hard movie at Nakatomi Plaza with Bruce Willis.
No way. Is that really?
So if you watch, it's, Die Hard is a lot of people's favorite Christmas music. So if you want to see the building close up, that's a good movie.
I'm just trying to remember some of the lines from Die Hard. That was, I mean, movies were amazing. How iconic were movies in the past? I mean, are we ever going to have those kind of movies again where there is an action hero, but actually a believable action hero, that he's not flying around in moon boots or he's not using a jetpack, that it's actually stuntmen and not necessarily green rooms? Like, what's happened to the movies? It's changed so much.
As I write about in my book, change is the one constant. And if you look at the superheroes from the past, Arnold, Stallone, and the current crop, like Spider-Man or whoever, whatever, the ones you just mentioned, it's a whole different world. I find I've never rented a movie. I love the big screen experience, and I used to go to 1 or 2 movies a week in LA. That's the thing you do, but it's been hard to find movies worth seeing lately. I walked out of more movies in the last year than I walked out of my entire life.
Hey guys, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed, who is following us on all platforms, but especially here on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, please, if you could do us a big favor, which helps us reach more people, get better, bigger, greater. We've already had some great guests anyway. Everyone's been a treat. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell so you're notified every week a new podcast that is launched. And I just want to say a big thank you. But again, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and enjoy watching Muscle Talks podcasts. You're a fat teenager and struggling with your weight. You had even, for some reason, I don't know how it coincided, but you had dyed your hair green for St. Patrick's Day, and you turned the water green when you jumped into it. It wasn't like Moses turning the Nile red, but it was not appreciated, and you were asked to leave. Is that coincided together, yes?
Yes, because I had dyed my hair for St. Patrick's Day. I had dyed it green. I'm half Irish, half German.
Yes.
And we were at my Boy Scout troop was at the Jewish Community Center pool.
Yep.
And I jumped in and turned the water green.
Oh God.
So I I was asked to leave. That was one of the last things I had to do to get my fitness merit badge was swim in a pool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never got the badge.
You never got the badge, but
I ended the Boy Scouts as a Life Scout, not an Eagle Scout.
is Eagle Scout like
It's the top.
Is it like what do you call it in America? You call it, what's your troops? You got your normal regiment. You got your what's your elite soldiers? They go to, where do they go again? What do they call it? It's on the tip of my tongue. Chris?
Well, there are many SEALs.
SEALs, Navy SEAL. Is it like becoming a Navy SEAL?
Well, hardly. It was a Boy Scout version, I guess, of the Navy SEAL to get the top. Yeah.
I'm just giving it as an analogy, as kind
You're
of
right,
like a picture. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Have you got over it?
Oh, a long time ago, yes.
I just needed to know if we needed to counsel you. I just wanted to make sure I was here for you, Ed, and we were going to make sure that everything's all right.
The tragic thing is that American youth are more obese than ever.
I know, but why? I mean, I think we've all become, besides the American youth, I think we've all become somewhat stupid when it comes to food. And you mentioned something in a podcast. You said that today business and to succeed in the fitness world isn't about exercise, it's about nutrition. If you can get the nutrition right, you're in business. So it seems like we lost our way when additives and our food started to change. But why have we accepted it, Ed? Why have we accepted this style of food now?
I guess big business has done a great job of merchandising. The food industry has done a great job of making everything attractive. I had an opportunity. You have the I don't know what fast food chains you have in Australia. Do you have well, you have McDonald's, of course.
Yes.
Ray Kroc founded McDonald's. So there was another one whose owner I had a chance to meet. We got him to adopt a healthy food menu. Carl Parcher. Do you have Carl's Jr. there in Australia?
No.
Do you have that chain?
No, we don't. No. We don't have many.
Well, I had a chance to meet with both of them actually. And we got Carl Jr. to actually have a Gold's Gym meal on the menu, which was a charcoal chicken sandwich, a salad, a baked potato.
Yeah.
So, but they both apologized to me. They said, we didn't know what we were doing. We knew nothing about nutrition. And if you think back even to the early days of Gold's Gym, there were no personal trainers teaching nutrition. Nutrition wasn't a big deal. And in fact, what was out there was kind of a joke.
Yeah.
I remember going to the plant where somebody was making a protein powder, and they were not making their quotas, their margin. So they actually took sawdust off the floor and put it in the can, in the container, like the one in front of you, the ISO rip container.
Yep.
So what was on the label wasn't necessarily what was in the jar or can or package.
Wow.
And it tasted terrible, and you needed a blender to make it work. Nowadays, I mean, this is one of the biggest changes in the 45 years I've been around the fitness industry, is the availability of quality supplements and the way they mix or the way they taste. That did not exist.
But do you think, though, and again, when I remember the past, it was to be honest, though, it was very clean. We were just told to eat chicken and rice, have egg whites, lean meat. We even were encouraged to eat even pasta, because pasta wasn't so, I don't know, heavily, whatever it is now that bloats you. It just, there was a lot of, and potatoes, and actually, well, let's not just talk about the guys that did meal prep, but you even knew when you went out, you'd go to a charcoal chicken place and you just get a chicken and a potato, and you knew you're eating well. It's very simple. Now, do you think, Ed, and this is my conspiracy, I'm going to let you know my conspiracy theory. My conspiracy theory is that the food like the food groups, councils, whatever you call it, bring in the numbers, like calorie numbers, how much you're eating, kilojoules, calorie numbers. I believe they brought that in to trick us, because you could never say McDonald's is healthy. But if it's in your calories and it's in your measurement of food supplement for the day, you'd eat it. Do you think the same thing? Do you think the numbers have confused everyone?
Well, you've just enlightened me. I think you're onto something. I never thought of it that way. In other words, you're saying that that it doesn't really matter what it is, but as a consumer that's your number of calories.
Exactly.
But you're not thinking about, well, is this processed cheese good for me or not?
That's right.
So yeah, I think actually you're on. Maybe we should tell Robert Kennedy. We should.
Yeah, I do. I believed it a long time ago, and it was kind of my argument with a lot of people on the podcast. Not argument like we didn't get on.
Yeah.
But I said to people, you could never turn around and say McDonald's is what's it called? Is healthy. You can't turn around and say I'm going to what is it called? It's like fat-free, or it's healthy, or whatever it is. But like I said, I believe they brought the numbers in so you can eat ice cream, so you can eat biscuits, so you can go to McDonald's, so you can go and get processed food. And the funniest thing is, I think also personal trainers and gym people have fallen trapped to it, because they're believing that it doesn't matter what you eat as long as you're hitting your calories, but they've taken macro and micronutrients out of it. And the last thing I'll say is 2,000 calories of carbohydrates is not the same thing as 2,000 calories of protein. So how can you just say hit your calories for the day when that not all calories are the same? But they've convinced them, they're offering them courses, and they're making us believe now when we go to McDonald's that we not only look at the menu, but we're looking at the numbers, which makes it okay to eat junk food.
Right. No, I think you're making a good point.
No, thank you. God, I feel honored actually for you're the first person to agree with me, and maybe that I've caught him out. Now we've got to talk to Kennedy, of course. I'd like to be part of his team. What do you think about Kennedy?
Well, I didn't vote for Trump, but I don't like Trump personally. But I feel the way COVID handled was a terrible mistake, a tragic mistake.
Yes.
And so, anyone that would actually prevent us from shutting down the next pandemic, or the alleged pandemic, would be my hero, because I mean, the quarantine was not just bad for the gym business. It was horrible, at least in the U.S. for students.
Everything,
and
hospitality.
For many, movie theaters, restaurants, you name it. And I know it was actually, I think it was even, California did not handle it well. Imagine if you owned a gym in California, it was closed 26 months. But if you own one in Florida or Texas, it was closed for 4 months. That's a big difference. And I think in Australia, I think Melbourne actually handled it even more poorly than California or the US.
Melbourne was even shooting people with plastic bullets. That's how bad it was in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Melbourne was pulling people out of their homes. It was incredible.
It was just the flu. And to me, it's nature's way of cleaning house. I think, and now I read recently that half of Americans put on an average of 29 pounds during the pandemic, during the shutdown. So think of the diabetes issue, other health issues that we're going to have because of that. So it was a disaster, and only Sweden got it right.
Well, 100% Sweden got it right.
Yeah,
I think you mentioned something as well. Sorry to interrupt. I think you mentioned as well that on a podcast that someone asked you that the gym industry is constantly growing, and you mentioned that last year, I think June, July, they had some of their worst records in the gymnasiums.
Well, 30% of the gyms in America have closed permanently.
There you go.
And you know, one of your listeners asked about getting in the gym business now,
Yes,
or what I would advise. So
yes.
I could segue into that.
Yeah, please do. I need a pen, Chris. I've got to write the answer.
Actually, for the first time in a long time, I could encourage someone to get into a gym business, but it would have to be a slightly different version.
What would it be?
Well, it would be smaller. It's kind of back to the future right now. In other words, what old is good again. Again, it gets back to history repeating itself. But you know, when I bought Gold's Gym with Pete Gronkowski and Tim Kimber, it was 4,500 square feet. Mm-hmm. We grew to 26,000 square feet, which became over 9 years, which became the kind of one gym fits all. Mm-hmm. And that was copied by a lot of other people for 2 decades.
Yes, it was.
And then it began to all split apart to, you know, high end, middle, and low. And that makes sense too. But now we're at a point where the smaller, under 10,000 square foot gyms are viable. So I mean, and you could, if you pick the right location, you know, you'll do more than just buy yourself a job. You'll have a livelihood.
How many square meters did you say?
I would say, well, it's 10,000 square feet, which I believe is about 1,000 square meters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A number of gyms closed during the pandemic, but I see operators going into the old locations where the owner left, the gym entity left, and they're taking them over without having to go through any major TI expense, tenant improvement expense. Mm-hmm. The shower's already in, you know, all that's there. So, you know, your viewers or your listeners should, if they're interested in the business, look around their town and see if there's a former gym location that's available for rent. You know, landlords are hurting right now. Mm-hmm. You know, and the smart ones will lease it out at a favorable rate. And again, if it's under 10,000 square feet, and the ones I see in LA are charging, you know, on average, I'd say $79 a month.
Yeah.
So, you know, the gyms are surviving are surviving only because they've increased their rates. Even Planet Fitness is now at $25 a month, not $19.
Okay.
So everything's gotten more expensive to survive. I mean, that's why we have $20 hamburgers in the U.S. I don't know what they are in Australia, but eating out has gotten much more expensive because of fewer people eating out. So the surviving restaurants have to raise their prices, but then it becomes kind of a vicious circle because people then don't go out as often because it's too expensive. So the quarantine was horrible. It was just, you know, and Trump was in office when it started. I mean, people, you know, think he's so great, but he didn't handle it well when he was in office. If he'd been a businessman, I would have just said, hey, you know, let's deal with it. Let's not shut down. It's nature's way. Let's all go get to the gym and eat cleaner.
Well, it was a form of pneumonia, I reckon. I think it was just a high-level flu. It was just something like pneumonia. And before we were allowed to treat pneumonia. We're allowed to cough in the doctor's waiting room. We're allowed to cough in front of our doctor, but we weren't allowed to cough anywhere. We weren't allowed to go anywhere. We weren't allowed to take anything really. So it was quite poorly run. Since we're talking about, I'll save that question for later, but what I found was how you got over your merit badge, not making it to that last point of the merit badge, is that 40 years later, there you are on the 59th floor of the Sears Tower in Chicago, selling a gym chain you started in the 1980s to a private equity buyer for $44 million. I think that definitely helped you get over the merit badge. I got a feeling. Did it help?
Well, there is something to hearing that money or get a phone call from your bank verifying that money hit your bank account. It's people have compared it to sex. I would have to agree that
So just like Arnold said, getting a pump is like coming.
Mm-hmm.
Getting $44 million is like having sex.
Well, I'm sure Arnold getting $25 million for doing a movie is also very satisfying. He so many of the bodybuilders I've known came from incredibly poor backgrounds.
Yes.
And I think one of the points I make in my book is that nothing destroys self-esteem more than growing up poor. Like the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, we now have a vice president, J.D. Vance, who wrote a book called Hillbilly Elegy, which I would encourage people to read.
Yep.
And it was made into a movie on Netflix. But he grew up poor, but I would contend that probably more than half my 500 and some house guests grew up even poorer.
Yeah.
So many of them were raised by grandmothers.
Yeah.
They deserve medals. But
why grandmothers? Why grandmothers? Why not mothers? What does it mean, grandmothers?
Well, J.D. Vance's mother was on crack, and father left him. Jim Hellwig, Ultimate Warrior's father, left him when he was 9 years old, and mother lived in a trailer. He couldn't wait to leave home, and I see it with so many. And there's just something about growing up poor. I just read the Trevor Noah's book, the American comedian who is from South Africa. Another great read, but he also grew up incredibly poor, raised by a really good mom, but no father really. Well, not in most of his life. Yes, he was biracial, so he had his own issues. But yeah, I just people don't. I don't think acknowledge the extent to which growing up poor just handicaps you for life.
And tell me, these people that came to you, I'm assuming besides being poor or growing up poor and wanting to survive, I'm sure their attitude, maybe their language, maybe their intelligence was also a little bit, turbulent at times. How did you handle that? And the last question I'm going to ask you is, when you, obviously I'm thinking you saw something about them. That was one. But two, was it your Christian faith? Was it your faith that did it? Was it something you were doing through faith as well?
Well, I'll start with the last question. I grew up Catholic. I still go to church. I'm disappointed in my church on many levels.
Yes, of course.
But my mom would always say to me, there but for the grace of God go you or I.
Yeah.
And I look at people and, if I could help somebody, sure. If I could change a life. I mean, people would say to me, Ed, why do you do what you do? Knowing that I'd maybe spent some money on somebody. The average American, according to the last U.S. Census, and this is my book, spent $16,000 on a dog during its lifetime. For a few $1,000s, I could change someone's life.
Yep.
My entire investment in John Cena is probably under $6,000.
Wow.
But look at the lives he's changing. With his being a superhero or a role model for so many people.
Yes.
So Jay Cutler has become a great spokesperson for bodybuilding. So I really and you mentioned that they come out they're just interested in surviving. I think all of them had a dream.
Okay.
It might have been their first time on a plane. They were from small town America. They were coming. They were coming out to the Mecca. It was an eye opener. And the strange thing about LA, unlike say a small town or most big cities, is that so many people come here with a dream. So they were in Gold's Gym Venice, where they got a lot of support. Oh gosh, my battery's running low on the computer. On my shoot. I guess we've been at. I had it on for an hour because we were supposed to start at 3, and that's all I got power for. Shoot.
Oh no.
Darn.
Oh,
Um,
is that battery scheduled for a certain amount of time? Is it?
yeah, my battery lasts for an hour, and
Oh
I turned it on at 3. I didn't realize, we
no.
started to
Oh.
shoot. Can
The,
we continue tomorrow or later in the week?
yeah, we could definitely continue tomorrow. We can definitely.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Shoot.
How much battery has it got?
It says your Mac will sleep soon unless plugged into a power outlet.
You can't find a power outlet.
I'm in the middle of
You're in the middle of a mall.
I'm in the middle of a outdoor mall with grass.
I know.
Let me show you that.
Oh yeah, I can see it. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. But what about, sometimes near the food halls, they've got PowerPoints. They've got PowerPoints on the walls.
Okay, well let me can I look for something and then call you back?
Yeah, do that. Just
Okay,
message
okay.
us. Do that.
A few moments later.
They came with a dream. I don't know if it was necessarily to move to California, but I think they wanted to see what the Mecca was like. And keep in mind, back in those days, I mean, many of them came out after the competitions. In other words, they might have entered a Gold Gym Classic back in their home state, like Jay Cutler,
Mm-hmm.
and then he came out to get publicity, because back then, there were no social media, so the magazines were the social media of the day. If you wanted to get known, having just won a local show or a state show, you would come to LA to get photographed. The magazines were kind of cheap and lazy about sending out their photographers or reporters.
Mm-hmm.
So you really had to come to Los Angeles, which is in a way kind of a shame. The magazines, now that I think about it, didn't do more to cover the scene across the U.S. or across the world. They're very limited.
Yeah. But let's talk about the athletes themselves. What were they like when they came to you? Were they surprised that here's this American fellow, he's giving up his time? I mean, I don't think the world has experienced someone like you, Ed. I think you're an anomaly when it comes to that. I don't think anyone can fly into Australia and people bring so many people into their homes and sitting on their couches.
Well, of course, part of it was they understood that if they were staying in my home, they would then do all the photography at Gold's Gym Venice.
Yep.
And I actually, some of them didn't get it. I actually had a few house guests that shot at Powerhouse or World. I sent them home. I said, you don't get it. I mean, this is how I make my living.
Right.
Is with Gold's Gym.
Hey, I'm Jamie from Portion.
And I'm Steve, Muscle Talks podcast.
And we heard that you guys are very into clean eating for yourselves, so we figured we'd educate you a bit about clean eating for your dogs. That's why Portion has decided to partner with Muscle Talks and give you promo code MuscleTalks25 for 25% off your first order at portion.com.au. That's PAWTION.com.au.
And if you continue ordering through Portion, please use Muscle Talks 10, and that gets you, with continued orders, 10% off. We're quite excited to be part of Portion. I've got a few dogs running around us just as I talk now. So please support not only good eating for ourselves, but I'm sure you want to promote good eating for your loved one, your pet, your dog. So go to portion.com.au and use, for your first order, Muscle Talks 25 to get 25% off your first order, and then continued orders, Muscle Talks 10.
I would still, they were still, I hope, a friend, but they couldn't stay for free at my place because I had other people who wanted to come out. I had, at various times, I had from 3 to 7 extra bedrooms, 8 bedrooms in my different homes. Mm-hmm. So, there were lives changed because somebody stayed longer or didn't show, or it's amazing thinking back about the missed opportunities because other people abused them. So it wasn't, and again, I've told people many times that if the people believed in themselves as much as I did, there would be more John Cena's or Jay Cutlers on that list. But some of them came out, and actually, I mentioned in my book, some of them said, Ed, this life's not for me, but I'm glad you showed it to me because you saved me several years out of my life.
Wow. Okay. Well, you mentioned in the podcast, Callum von Mogger, whatever his name is. You mentioned that you I don't know if you brought him out, but you encouraged him to take on wrestling, and you believed he would be as big, or if not bigger, as a superstar like John Cena. But for some reason, and not because he wasn't a talented fellow and couldn't do business, but he just didn't understand the direction you were offering him and where he could go. Is that right?
I think that's a good way to characterize it. Again, Colin was young. This was 11 years ago.
Yes.
And I can imagine for many, especially Europeans, going out for American pro wrestling is the farthest thing from their mind.
It is.
And he may have other ideas, but he was one of maybe only 3 people I've met that looked like a young Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
And I thought he did a great job in the movie Bigger. And I think if he had taken the WWE offer to go to the wrestling school, who knows, he might be in movies by now, because I think he's obviously he's got a great look for the screen, but it wasn't his dream.
No, it wasn't. It definitely, yeah. Well, I don't know. He got a bit. His life did skewer for a little while. But can I just ask, when these gentlemen came to your gym? I mean, there's a lot of muscle, a lot of testosterone, a lot of whatever's going on. How did you police that? How did you police some of these characters?
Well, ironically, it was my one of my tasks to basically suspend people's memberships who got in fights in the gym.
Right.
There weren't really that many. Actually, Craig Titus, I had to suspend 3 times. The last time, it didn't really matter because he was already in jail for murder.
Did you ever sometimes wonder to yourself, what have I got myself into? Many times?
Well, I had 3 house guests who either murdered someone or are being accused of murder. And I looked on the stats for the, America, and actually, given the number of house guests I had, to have a couple of murderers in the group is not unheard of statistically.
Well, at least we're running statistically. And also, you mentioned it was a bit like having refugees, like literally people from other countries. And I guess they never understood. You spoke about the American dream. I guess they didn't understand what the American dream was.
Quite a few of them did. I mean, it is something I think unique to America. I think I know among the European house guests, they some of them got it and some didn't. It's a uniquely American trait, I think. The American dream is something that I believe in, but it's definitely not what it used to be. It's I think a lot of people have forgotten or don't dare to dream anymore. But I still think, here I was 30 years old when I came to LA. I was given the opportunity to design the new Neiman Marcus store in Beverly Hills.
You were, yes.
And then 4 years later, I'm an owner of Gold's Gym. I mean, that would not happen anywhere else in the world, let alone America.
But were you looking for it? This is what I'm saying, is that were you, like, the opportunity came to you, but some people are looking for it and don't find it, but for you it just seemed to happen.
Well, I believe a lot in the power of positive thinking. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I went to Gold's Gym Venice the first time, I thought to myself, on this, and I did. A few years later, and I've been that way with a lot of things. I'm not a negative person. I think you've got to think positively, even if it seems outrageous. A lot of this stuff you just can't make up. I mean,
So, so you ended up, you were an architect in New York. You got laid off, and you decided to, I guess, travel the country to find work that you wanted to do. And you ended up. Where'd you end up again? You ended up in a place. Where, because you did you for a moment you were looking at work for Disneyland in Orlando. Is that right? They were hiring.
No, they were hiring, but I wasn't willing to work there. I traveled to different places in America looking for a new job. It was another recession in America, and architects are the first to go in a recession. But Disney was hiring for Epcot, the new, city of the future. But the weather reminded me so much of Vietnam. I said, I'm not going to live here. It was 100% humidity and rain all the time. And, LA by comparison was like paradise. I mean, it really is, by comparison, it really is incredible weather. And I wrote back to my architect friends back in New York. I said, I can't believe I'm this shallow, but I would move here just for the weather.
Wow. I mean, of course, why wouldn't you? But seeing you mention Vietnam, you did a 21-month service in Vietnam. What was that like? Was that scary?
Well, it taught me that I'm tougher than I thought it was.
Really? Tell us more. Tell us about that.
Well, when I was being sent over there, I thought I was going to die, and people would say, well, how could you go knowing you were going to die or thinking you were going to die? And I just, you live in a democracy, you have to go with the majority of what, people want. And back at the beginning of the Vietnam, for the majority of Americans support. I was in Berkeley. I was part of the anti-war movement. I didn't believe in the war. I still don't believe in, our Afghanistan and Iraq and our future follies. We don't seem to have learned anything from Vietnam. But once you're over there, you do the best job you can. And I got several medals for what I did, and I'm proud of my service. But again, I didn't believe in the war.
Was it confronting?
I targeted B-52 strikes out of a helicopter.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Being an architect, I could read a map. This is the days before GPS.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to decipher things that were going on in the ground and target effectively more than, most of my fellow soldiers.
So you come back, and obviously the recession you speak about, and you need to move states, and being somewhat not so much shallow, but you love Los Angeles and you love the weather climate there. But tell us about Orange Avenue Gym, and that's where you met your first business partner, Peter Konkowski.
Well, when I was in Orlando interviewing with Disney, I went over to Orange Avenue Gym to see a friend of mine from New Haven. And while I was there, I saw Pete Konkowski, who was probably the biggest human being I'd ever seen. And I said, boy, you belong in LA. I just came from there, and you'd fit in right in Gold's Gym Venice. And Pete told me, he said, Ed, I to move. I don't have any money. I lost my. I don't even have a car, and I'm going through a divorce. And I said, well, if I take the job in LA, I'll get you out there, and you can go for the Mr. World contest, which Joe Weider was putting on. And so I took the job in LA, and I sent Pete a one-way ticket. He stayed with me for a short time, and then 4 years later, or several years later, he called me up and said, Ed, Gold's Gym is for sale. Are you interested? And I said, sure. and I didn't hesitate. And Pete, I became Pete Gronkowski's partner.
I just want to know what were you getting out of helping Pete? Like, all right, are you just a person that likes helping people? Like, there has to be an agenda here. Like, were you a talent scout? Did you get?
Well, I seem to have an eye. I seem to have an eye for talent.
Yep.
Again, I just looked at someone like Pete, and I thought, my God, he belongs in L.A. And I see something. I mean, I don't, I guess if I had an ear for music and I have no ear for music,
Mm-hmm.
I heard a young guy in the violin or piano, I might say to myself, well, my God, this kid is incredible. He needs to be, a Juilliard or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I hadn't, I have a good eye for talent, I guess. I mean, I could spot, John Cena in the gym. People said, Ed, how did you find John? I said, well, it was obvious. I mean, he looked like a Matt Damon with muscles. And,
Yes.
And all the people I've seen and tried to encourage, they all had something that I thought was a unique talent. I call it a God-given talent. In other words, if I looked like some of these people, I know I'd have so much fun and with it. I could make something of it. I could have an incredible life, given the God-given gift they've been given. And Pete was big but miserable, and I thought LA would be the perfect place for him, and it was. He became Mr. World. He won his height class, and then went on to tour the world. And had became a majority partner in the gym.
Before you got Gold's Gym, was it a place you just went and trained at, or was it a place you knew of? And also, you mentioned that what was the love affair with bodybuilding? Because you trained yourself, but you just knew you didn't have kind of possibly.
Again, when I was at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, I joined a gym, which was not a pleasant experience given the high pressure sales. To lose weight for the Army, I was 250 pounds.
Yes.
None of it was muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Very little of it. So I got into the magazines and started doing what I could to lose weight. And so I became a fan. And back then, Gold's Gym in Venice was the place. So I knew it as the Mecca as early as the early 70s.
And how?
I would.
Yep. Sorry, go on.
I graduated in 1968 from Berkeley, but that was the dawning of the Gold's Gym. Joe Gold started Gold's Gym in '65.
Yes.
And so I was, I was all part of that. And then when I was in Vietnam, it was the era of pumping iron.
It was. And tell me, when did you meet Joe Weider? Because you mentioned do you introduce Pete to Joe Weider or something like that?
No, I actually, yeah, we ultimately all met, but the first, I don't know, few months Gold's Gym in 1979, Joe Weider pulled our ads from the magazine. And keep in mind, a little ad at the back of his magazine could get us, 3,000 or 4,000 a month in T-shirt sales. Yep. Which was significant money back then. In fact, I think it might have even been as high as 10 grand a month in ad revenue.
Wow.
He pulled our ads for some strange reason. I don't know. I'm not sure really to this day what it was, but I called him up. Pete went to see him and the meeting didn't go well. And so I then thought, well, cooler heads could prevail. And I called Pete up or Joe up and I said, can we talk? And he goes, oh, Ed, I hear you're an architect, and he had a unique way of speaking.
Yep.
And he described something going on in his remodel at his home in Hancock Park in LA.
Yep.
And he said, "Can you help me?" So I went over there the next day. I was actually working for an architecture firm very close to his home.
Yep.
So I went over there, and sure enough, he was in trouble. So over the next few months, and actually several years, I helped him with his house and his office building with some architectural work. So we became friends after that, really, because he actually appreciated my eye in scouting new talent or picking the cover for his magazine.
So you had the gym then, correct? But you're still architecting, so that you had bought in the gym.
Right.
And just because we're going to go a little bit back and forth, you bought the gym for 100,000.
Right.
You needed to find 50,000. And can I just ask, in those terms, what it was 100 grand worth, you reckon, today, buying a gym for 100 grand with what you're doing?
I would say probably $250,000.
Okay. And tell me, you turned 4,500 square meters into 26,000 square meters, but through time, that was that one gym. But at the same time, while doing that, you obviously formed friendships with Joe Wider. People were coming to your gym, and then obviously you were part of Pumping Iron. Is that correct?
No, Pumping Iron was filmed in 1975.
So way before. I just want to make sure. Okay, but it was at Gold's Gym, correct?
Right. It was at the first location for Gold's Gym. When I bought Gold's Gym with Pete and Tim, it was in its second location, and then I moved it in 1981 back to its third and final location in Venice.
Okay.
So it went from Venice to Santa Monica back to Venice.
Okay. And tell me, who had a better eye for bodybuilders, you or Joe Wider?
Well, the problem with Joe, and I talk about this in my book, is he didn't want to visit Venice.
Right.
Venice is kind of an acquired taste. It's back then it was gangland. It was a dangerous area of LA.
Yeah.
It had the highest murder rate of any zip code in America.
Right.
And so Joe would rarely come down to the gym. When he did, it was great. But so he didn't see the people I saw coming through the door. We had, on a good Monday, we had 2,000 people coming through the gym.
Wow.
My office was right next door. So, and the front counter guys would call and say, "Ed, there's this big kid over here looking for a membership," but and they would actually be my scouts. They would actually encourage me to give somebody a free membership if they knew they couldn't afford it.
Right. Okay. Yes.
So it's amazing that someone would come all the way out to LA and then somehow not have enough money to join the gym for a day or a week or whatever. But there were people like that. The Barbarian Brothers came in one day and they looked like they belonged. So we gave them a free membership, which they were free members for 20 years. When we sold the gym the first time in 1999, one of them came to me and said, they want us to pay. And I said, well, maybe after 20 years, it's time.
Unbelievable. And in that time, obviously, John Cena worked for you, obviously, at Gold's Gym, but you also did Gold's Gym Wrestling. Is that correct?
Well, actually, people forget that, or don't really know that pro wrestling was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
And actually, it still is. It's
Yes.
kind of in a reorganizational mess right now. But back in the day, this is before the Standards and Practices Act, wrestlers could go into the ring wearing a Gold Gym T-shirt.
Right.
So just as we were beginning to, sprout Gold Gym franchises all over America in the 80s, the World Wrestling Federation, later the WWE, started, had matches all over the U.S. In fact, every night in America, 15,000 people typically were seeing a wrestling match, and that would be free publicity for the Gold's Gym in that town, because they'd go into the ring wearing a Gold's Gym T-shirt, having trained in the gym that day, rip it off in the ring, throw it to the crowd. it was a ruined T-shirt, but it was a lot of free publicity for Gold's Gym. It was so much publicity at one point that Vince McMahon talked to us about buying us because he thought he was giving us so much free publicity.
So are you really a marketing maestro? Like, in other words, you just know how to work your marketing budget, which sometimes doesn't require the dollars. It requires the talent. It requires the location. It requires a lot of giving, a lot of putting things out there. Yeah. It's not just about closing deals and paying for, because sponsorship can be very, very expensive. So did you find loopholes? You found opportunities where you could utilize better your dollars by not investing in so much paying for it, but getting it out there, getting talent to wear it, pushing the boundaries?
Well, you mentioned giving, and I have a chapter in my book called Give to Get. Mm-hmm. We would give away $60,000 to $80,000 a month in free T-shirts or clothing and memberships. Mm-hmm. So that was our marketing. I mean, Gold's Gym has been called the ultimate grassroots marketing. We didn't pay for any major ads. The magazines, all that. When you put down an issue of Muscle and Fitness, you might have just seen Gold's Gym on 25 pages. Some of them, full color. We didn't pay for any of that.
Wow.
That was all just letting the photographers roam in, free in the gym, and often, finding the talent that I had found training there. So, and back then, a full page ad in one of Weider's magazines cost $35,000.
And you're getting it relatively for free.
All free. Relatively all free.
It reminds me of, I don't know if you know Robert Kiyosaki. You know Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Oh, yeah, sure. I met him actually last year.
He talks about making money for free, being able to find opportunities where you make money for free.
It's interesting that you mentioned him, because I told him, of course, most of my house guests didn't come with the library.
Yeah.
But the few books that I remember them people bringing with them to their trip west was Rich Man, Poor Man.
Yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was called Rich Dad.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sorry.
I read that book too.
that was their favorite. So
it was a good book.
It's interesting that was the common book that the only one I can think of.
Well, it made me jump on a plane and go buy property in New Zealand for free.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know why. I don't know if I could do it today. So when was it when you decided this can be a franchise? Or did you know from day dot when you got involved?
Well, it was pretty quickly. And Pete was traveling the world as Mr. World. Mm-hmm. And it occurred to him that not everybody could come to the Mecca. Mm-hmm. So he thought, well, why not bring the Mecca to the people? And I knew of, because I'd gone to Berkeley, I was familiar with San Francisco, and I knew two bodybuilders up there that had opened a gym but weren't doing well. And they couldn't call it Gold's Gym, they called it Diamond Gym.
Yes.
But I thought, well, if that's Gold's Gym, maybe it'll do better. And so that became the first franchise. That was in 1980. So I bought, in fact, this coming Friday is the 46th anniversary of me, Pete, and Tim buying Gold's Gym in 1979.
Wow.
And it was June 1980 that I opened the Gold's Gym in San Francisco. So it was, less than 18 months between when we bought the gym and when we opened the first franchise. It was called a license back then. Franchising was in its infancy.
Okay. And what was, so you went from one gym to 535. How long did that take?
That took 20 years, and then we sold, and I stayed on. We all stayed on as shareholders in the new company, and then they grew it to 704 gyms. So to go from 1 to 535 took 20 years, and then to go from 535 to 704 took 5 years.
And there was a period where you were mentioning there was a bit of a dive back for some reason. You were trying to work out as that growth happened between those when you sold it in 1999 or 2000, growing at a rapid rate, and then there was a bit of a decline, and you were trying to work out what is going on here and how do you fix this decline. I think you spoke about 50 gyms or something happened.
Yeah, the reason, frankly, we decided to sell was because we had two major chains buying up our successful franchises. It's easier to buy a gym than to start from scratch.
Yes.
Especially if you know what you're getting. So you can imagine there were two big chains in the U.S., Town Sports International on the East Coast and 24-Hour Fitness on the West Coast.
Yes, that's what happened. 24-Hour Fitness was changed. Things were happening. Yes, go ahead.
They had access to money, and they were expanding, so they would cherry pick our better gym owners. And of course, some of them had been in the business quite a few years and wanted to retire or sell. So we lost 50 gyms pretty quickly.
Yes.
And then during that time, I tried to find an access to money. I would love to have gone public, but I couldn't get enough of our gym owners to pool their resources and do that. So it was, I guess it's my biggest disappointment is that we didn't go public, but I still think probably my biggest achievement is that we were able to sell the business the first time in 1999. No gym had ever been sold like that. No, and it was definitely a lot of work, but well worth it.
Yeah, it was. What do you think of the gym environments today? What do you think of what's happening in the gym environments today?
Well, it's incredibly different. The big box gyms are in trouble. Millennials are not going back. Gen Z and millennials, with the main market of the gym, are key now, but more key than ever. But the problem is the baby boomers aren't going back in the same number because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them dropped off, and so the big box gyms are in trouble. And all the gyms to survive have raised their rates to levels that I don't think are sustainable.
Yeah, no, they're becoming definitely they're not sustainable. Let's just quickly talk about some of the people that came through there. And you mentioned on a podcast, and the story I'm going to bring up is a little bit about this. Well, firstly, steroids. Can I just ask you a question about steroids?
Right.
You said, I think 6 years after you got Gold's Gym, not to say it's about Gold's Gym, this has nothing to do with just time frame. I think like steroids became illegal, but now they seem to be, has turned around, and not that they're legal, but they're spoken about more so today. So you speak about these myths about, or you break some myths about steroids thing. With all the guests you've had, not one person died from steroids, but you did have, unfortunately, 6 guests that passed away, but for other reasons, things like synthol poisoning and other things. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, at the back of my book, there's a list of my house guests and the number that have died, also the number that became gym owners or pro bodybuilders or pro wrestlers. And I updated that list recently, and 60, I think it's 65 now are dead out of 535.
Right.
The majority of them from traffic accidents.
Yeah.
Typically killed driving alone at night, probably falling asleep at the wheel.
Yep.
So that's number one cause. But every time I start looking into the death of somebody prominent in the fitness world,
Mm-hmm.
pro wrestler, football player, whatever, bodybuilder, steroids are the least likely suspect.
Yes.
It's usually recreational drugs, or synthol has killed at least 6 people I know.
Yep.
And I would say growth hormone in excess has definitely hurt quite a few with enlarged hearts.
Yeah. I suppose when you're enlarging everything, aren't you? Really?
You're enlarging all your organs, and I remember Jeep Swenson, who was really an incredible bodybuilder, really a wonderful guy. He was, um, I was at UCLA hospital when he was, taken in for care. And I said to the doctor, can't you give him a heart transplant? And he said that, that we couldn't find a heart big enough. So I think that's a problem with a lot of the guys on too much growth hormone. But again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not advocating steroids, but now they're considered the fountain of youth. And I know bodybuilders, fitness guys who have never gotten off, taking low dosage, and they look 20 years younger than they are.
Really?
Yeah.
And do you think it's just the inexperience that talk about it, not so much the experience? Because it seems like the experienced guys don't really talk about it, but it seems like today, just teenagers and people in their early 20s, Gen Z, just talk about steroids like it's like vitamins.
Yeah, I don't like what I see or hear regarding, the supplement world nowadays. It's gotten out of hand, and it's not healthy. The dosages are nothing like what they were back in the 70s or 80s or 90s. I think like everything in our world, it's gotten to the extremes rather quickly. It's a shame because it's not. I think a lot of young people think, well, yeah, I could look like that if I just took steroids, but it's more than that. That's a very small part of it.
There was also risks with insulin, wasn't there, really, at times?
Yeah, insulin didn't exist, for most of that time, and that's another thing that scares me now with what the guys are doing.
But I think it made its ugly head in the 90s, though, for a moment.
Yeah. Right.
I think Dorian Yates had mentioned that spooked him, and I think Milosh maybe. A few have spoken about never touching that again. It was a spooky moment.
Yeah, I have many friends who are diabetic, so to me, insulin is a very scary prospect for someone. Yeah.
Yeah, and did you you mentioned that you couldn't run the gym the way it was in the past today. Why? What's different about the past to today?
Well, I would say one of the biggest things is music. Back in the day, it was the sound system was one of the most important pieces of equipment, and everybody in the gym was a part of that vibe, that music that was being played. Nowadays, everyone's got something in their ear. They're in their own little world.
Yes.
They've got first it was the Walkman, and then the earbuds, and it just headphones like you've got on. It's all part of our society where I see people walking around wearing earbuds or headphones, and I just think take them off and be part of the environment you're in, be part of the world that you're living in. Walking across the street could be a lot safer if you took off your headsets and stopped looking down at your phone and just engaged with the world.
You also mentioned you miss opportunity by not looking up.
Yeah. You might get killed.
Or besides being killed, opportunity in life, like opportunity in seeing what's around you, what.
Well, I don't know where you got that from, but that was part of my little speech at the Gold's Gym Convention last year when they gave me and Pete and Tim a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Okay.
And I said, Pete had talked for a half hour and Tim had talked at length, and I thought I should keep my speech short. So I said, well, if Pete Minkowski had been on his phone and never responded to me when I said, you should move to California, or if I had never answered back, we all wouldn't be here. Just that communication between two people could be life changing. And in the room there were a couple 100 people, and I just said, look at the person next to you. You never know who that may be, could change your life. Start talking, share information.
This is true. I don't think many people talk anymore. I think we're all looking for the quick fix. I don't think many people are sharing or talking, and everyone believes. I don't think anyone understands what's it called when people form a little bit of a kind of like a consortium, a kind of a group, have a common goal. People think you're taking their lives away from them when they can all go pursue what they want, but they could also work with others.
Right. I know you've probably seen this at restaurants, and where everybody at the table, my father and mother. Oops, excuse me.
That's all right.
Everybody's on their phone in their own little world.
Yes.
And rather than enjoying that moment, which is tragic, especially given the cost of dinner, eating out.
Most definitely. You also mentioned that Joe Water questioned you. How do you know, Ed? Then shortly after, you'd know who would be turning pro, and Joe Water asked you, and then shortly after they'd be turning pro. And as an architect, you could see beauty, and you could see a beautiful, symmetrical physique that could sell magazines. So you like I said, you mentioned that Joe Water questioned you on that. How do you see it? How do you see it, Ed? How do you see it? I'm asking you that question because everyone looks good. When I look at a bodybuilder and they're big, I think, wow, you look amazing. But what is it?
I don't know. It's just it's something I have a gift for. I just can look at something like a building. You saw that building earlier in the background. That was a symmetrical tower.
The next day.
Welcome back, Ed.
Good to be here. Thank you.
I love the images in the background. Could you explain? One of them is Marilyn Monroe. Who else have we got up there?
I don't know. I'm at a friend's place, and I'm not sure who all the people are in those photos. Frankly,
are they all women? Are they all women?
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful frames. Obviously, well done, well designed. I mean, speaking about friend, family, I want to start off with the fact that your dad was a doctor, and so and so your brothers. Tell me about that. Why didn't you become a doctor?
I think I was a black sheep. I remember getting on the plane to go to work in New York, and my dad said, "Gee, I wish you would have become a doctor." And I always thought he was trying to discourage me from pursuing that profession because this was the beginning of all the talk about socialized medicine.
Yes.
And so a lot of doctors were very negative about the future, but my brothers got the message. Well, they were all younger.
They got the message, did they? They got the memo?
Right.
And what kind of a doctor was your dad?
He was a surgeon.
Oh, surgeon. Okay. And what about your brothers?
Oncologist, dentist, and anesthesiologist.
Oh, right. Okay. How many brothers you got? I'm going to just go a little bit in history.
I've got 4 brothers.
And where did you grow up?
In Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay. So 4 brothers. Any sisters?
1 sister.
Okay. Wonderful. And so you were the black sheep of the family, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to go through some of my what we spoke about something earlier on, and it was a topic in relation to steroids. And I just want to write down. I want to mention the question I wrote. I'm just going through my notes quickly to get us up to date. I guess one of the questions I want to ask you is, why is, firstly, steroids so outspoken today? Like, it seems like in the past, no one spoke about it. I mean, you would never hear Lee Haney talk about it. You wouldn't hear Dorian Yates talk about it. You wouldn't hear anybody talk about it. Not even But why do you think it's so outspoken today?
I think because some of the scandals that have happened in America, athletes using steroids. And remember back in my day, well, of course, the pharmaceutical companies actually had on their labels that these don't help build muscle. Right. But nowadays, But nowadays, when someone wants to say how potent something is, they will say it's like so and so on steroids.
Right. Okay.
So the whole mentality around steroids, whether they work or not, or how powerful they are, I think has really changed. People, over the years have been pretty much taught that they do work.
Yep.
And of course, so much of modern medicine, the solution always seems to be taking steroids, or they'll warn you that you're going to be taking steroids. But I don't see the negative there.
Okay. Yeah. I see your point. It is true. You can have a common cold and they sometimes give you a steroid to get over it, or an infection or something. You're right. There is always an element of a steroid, isn't there, in certain medicines?
And nowadays there is, right. I don't think that existed back then, but my dad he did a lot of burn repair, and he would give his patients steroids because that would build up the lost muscle tissue. So even he was using them, but of course was a part of a world that believed that they were becoming dangerous or whatever. But I think they're more well known now. It's out there, and I think longevity clinics, regenerative medicine clinics are going to be a big thing in the future in the U.S.
Isn't that something you're looking at yourself? Since we're going to go that way a little bit, you're looking at something that yourself. And can I ask you, also testosterone is actually very much beneficial for women as well, especially in a later age, apparently, from what I've been hearing and reading.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I certainly don't like what it did to women in the bodybuilding age.
I think that's a bit of an extreme. What I mean is, I think when they've got menopause or a few things that are happening in their later age, their own natural women have testosterone, I think, in them naturally. I think that's, but I think it's replenishing what they've naturally had, not exceeding what they've naturally had. So go on.
Right. No, I don't know what, I don't know anything about that, frankly.
Okay. But what about what you mentioned? You didn't like the use or where steroids was going with women's sport in bodybuilding. Explain that a little bit more.
Well, my pretty much last and only female house guest was Corey Everson.
Yes, I know. I was going to ask you that. Yes.
And she was beautiful. She still is beautiful.
Yeah, she is.
She's like a Jane Fonda of bodybuilding.
She is.
But after her, it seemed to kind of go downhill in terms of look. And women's bodybuilding is pretty. We Gold's Gym pioneered women's bodybuilding. We had the first women's bodybuilding competition in 1979.
Yep.
But now it's basically dead. I think largely because of the look. It's not a popular look. It's gone to extreme, like so many things. Even men's, yeah.
No, go
even
on.
Men's, yeah. But even men's bodybuilding has gone so extreme that now classic is really maybe the future, and people like Chris Bumstead have more of a following than among the general public than the bodybuilding class athletes.
Yeah, I had Monica Brandt on. She was amazing too. She was amazing. And she told me she did it naturally. She didn't even take steroids.
Yeah, she dated many of my house guests.
Did she? We're gonna have to put this as a hook bait. See if she accepts the collab. Yes, of course. Did you have Milosh at all? Did Milosh come and stay with you at all?
No, actually, that's kind of a sore subject. I'd rather not go there.
All right, no, let's not go there. Only because I think, sorry, I apologize. The reason I say that is I think Monica dated Milosh. I'm not too sure. I don't know.
I don't think so. But,
there you go. What do I know?
Yeah, he was married when I knew him.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. We don't need to go that way because it's like I said, I was kind of segueing from what I've heard. But Monica Brandt, and she did really well. She marketed herself very well. She was doing very well all around the world, selling posters, making a living out of it. And I think she was on the cover of 130 magazines.
I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's an amazing woman. I had her on. Very strong Christian as well.
Back in the day, they would usually put a a guy and a gal on the cover, and that's probably how many of my house guests met her.
Yes, 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 yes.
And I miss that era of those kind of cover photos.
Did you?
I think.
So did you only have bodybuilders come through your house, or was it wrestlers as well, and was there females as well? I think we should ask that question.
Well, there were a number of women. Typically, there was always a problem when the couples weren't married. I write in my book about Lee Priest. When he was at the house, I had two other house guests, and his fiance came over from Australia, and he was preparing for a show. So whether he wasn't interested in sex or whatever, she knocked on the doors of my other two house guests, at night, and that created a problem. I told Lee about it, and he didn't believe it. But of course, later on, when she took his prize money, and went back to Australia, I think he believed that, in fact, she really wasn't, in love with him. So, and that was kind of typical. Gunther Schlierkamp and his wife, his first wife really, Carmen, stayed at my home for 5 months while he learned English. But in the meantime, she did the talking, and they were a good couple. So it depends. If married couples, I felt comfortable. But again, you can imagine this. If I had 3 male bodybuilders in the house and one of them had a girlfriend with him, then the other 2 would feel kind of like third wheels or outsiders. In other words, my hope was that the 3 guys would share information and train together. Because here are 3 people who probably for the first time in their lives are with other people who train as hard as they do, have a goal, have a dream.
Yep.
And so having a girlfriend there, it upsets the balance. And it's so I so oftentimes I know a number of people I think could have turned pro or had a different life if they hadn't, say, taken the girlfriend to the contest. That's not a vacation. That's not a holiday. That's work. They're going to that contest to get a pro card or change their lives. But I so many women or girlfriends of the guys I've known don't understand that you've got to sacrifice. They think this is party time. This is a time to have some fun. But it's not really. It's work.
It's funny. I had a bodybuilder on, an Australian bodybuilder. His name is Jimmy Sadek, and he said to me, "If you want to win competitions and be a pro, you don't want to be in a relationship." He said.
Well, I would disagree with that. I think.
Okay.
I think actually, if you have a great relationship,
okay,
then you're not out clubbing at night. You're not out, partying or looking for a relationship. Jay Cutler had a girlfriend very early on, Carrie, and I think she was one of the reasons he did it. He got his pro card.
Yeah, yes.
They're divorced now, but I just met Jay's fiance. But they were a great team in the early days, and I think again you can't generalize, but I would say if you got, I think the key is marrying late and not having kids. I think once you start having kids, you have to settle down and raise a family.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think what you're saying is it's quite a selfish sport, especially to get to the level you want to get to. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. In other words, you need to dream, but you also need to execute, and for that you may have to sacrifice. I think that's a big difference with today's young people I meet. They're not willing to sacrifice. They want it all now. They want the nice car, wife, home, kid, but you can't necessarily have all that right away. You got to be prepared to. You hear it with even the celebrities. I was listening to an interview of the Chris who's the one that's married to one of Schwarzenegger's daughters.
I don't know.
Chris, and he was in the Jurassic Park movies.
Oh yeah. Australian actor, is that correct?
No, that's Chris Hemsworth.
Oh yeah,
There
sorry.
are too many Chris's out there. But anyway, he mentioned living in his car in LA, waiting tables and sacrificing, and you hear that from all of them. Almost all the actors. Very few arrived with much support or money.
But the thing is, Ed, do you think we've lost the art of helping people? Because I don't think they, obviously you help them, obviously sacrifice, and like you said, everyone wants it today, and they do. They all want it today. But things have changed a little bit. Don't you think the goalpost to get certain things is very far away? Like, have we got opportunity still? Do you think we've still got opportunity? Or do you think, let me just finish by saying this, or do you think, like, just something you said on another podcast, and we can mention it here, and I've heard it from others, that they're giving out pro cards to everyone, and how many divisions there are. And it's become, unfortunately, and correct me if I'm wrong, it just seems that way, and it is business, but registration is more important than finding a prize for somebody who's really deserves it. It's about, instead of getting crowds in to buy tickets to watch a spectacle, it's why don't we get everyone to pay? And the thing is, I was talking to an Indian fellow and also talking to a few men's physique guys, and they told me at Olympia there's 60 people competing. 60 on stage in men's physique. I mean, what I'm trying to say to you is you got to have a lot of patience to go through every single person. And also bikini. I'm not saying the girls look wonderful. It's wonderful maybe for the sport, but don't you think we've tired the sport out? And like, really, what is success now? I don't know.
Well, that's what I talked about in a number of podcasts and kind of addressed in my book. And I guess it bears repeating. Mm-hmm. It's not for me to judge really why somebody, goes for a title. I think it's good to have goals. And I think my publisher actually asked me to tone down that whole section in my book.
Okay.
Because, I look at it and I think, it's to me a lot of money not well spent.
Yeah.
For some of these people, or time or money well spent. But if in fact getting a pro card or being on stage, having a goal and seeing people in the gym see you train for it, if that makes you a more popular or successful private trainer, then that's something you do for your livelihood. Mm. And back in the day, people would say there's no money in bodybuilding, and that was certainly true, that it was only money in it for a few. Yep. But nowadays, I mean, there are, I think, hundreds of thousands of people worldwide making a great living training people.
Yep.
I don't know what the average personal trainer gets in Australia, but I would say minimum in LA is $55 an hour or session, and
it's more in Australia. It's more,
and a high of 200. Mm. So no, there are a lot of people making a great living training, and I think that helps them look the part, or be that person that people want to look up to have that pro status, or be competing year after year. Mm. So I can't be. I just feel that. In all fairness to them, the promoters I think the NPC, IFBB need to have fewer, I think there should actually be more pro shows, but there should be fewer amateur shows. Mm. I've been to a few recently where they were over in an hour and a half or less, which is great, but there were usually, many more trophies than competitors. The quality wasn't good, nor was the staging good. They were in typical flat ballroom venues, which a promoter got for free, but the athletes still had to pay, a couple $100 for an entry fee, and it's just become a money making thing for a lot of the promoters. I think we need to bring the drama, the glamour back, like Hollywood, over my head.
Yeah. I think I like I said, I love the sport. I think, all right, the reason I didn't compete, there was a reason why I didn't compete, and I'll tell you what it was. Firstly, I was happy with my career. I was a network engineer. So I was happy with my career, right? And I felt like if I'm going to get on stage and not have a sponsor or not have anything in place that makes it maybe financially beneficial, maybe I don't need to do it. I guess that's my mentality. But what I'm finding is everybody, and I think sometimes it's the personal trainers too, who have competed and at amateur level, but they're pushing their own clients to go on stage. And I feel, lastly, I'll say this, you can't go into a beauty pageant if you're not pretty. You can't. You can't go into a beauty pageant if you're not beautiful. I can't go into a beauty pageant, so that includes me. But I can go into a bodybuilding pageant. And I think they're creating a pageant instead of what it really is. And I think people are coming in underdone or overcooked, and they haven't developed muscle quality that possibly takes, like I said, they've just started bodybuilding and 2 years later they're on stage, unless they've got natural genetics. Right. And I feel they're doing a disadvantage to the sport, because I've gone to it and sometimes I wonder, I think, I don't know if they should be on stage. I'm saying they look great. But like I said, I think the amateur is becoming, like I said, I think their focus is registrations. Like you said, a lot of trophies. And like I said, and obviously the more people they get on stage, the more people they get in the crowd, because they bring their family and friends. So they're being smart. They're being smart businessmen. You know, they're being smart business people. But are they? But what I'm getting at is, I got a feeling bodybuilding is going to become a 2-day event. By the time we get through bikini, by the time we get through men's physique, by the time we get through all these other categories, and do you know how many opens there are? Usually 10 guys, like one lineup of 10 guys. So, yeah.
Well, in the old days, we used to hope that every contestant would have 10 family members or friends, come to the contest.
Yes.
But I given ticket prices, $100 for the finals and probably 50 or even 100 for the prejudging, I think again, attendance is down. It's you've got to make it more affordable for people to attend. And then it becomes so often a marathon where people are have to be there 8 hours to see see their friend, which I mean it just there's just so much wrong with it right now.
What would you change if you were given the keys to and they said, can you give us some ideas, and what could you advise us to do? What would you do?
Well, first off, and I've said this before, I would go into a legitimate auditorium with rake seating. That would be number one requirement. I would probably also, I would have a schedule where you would have each show separated during the day so that you knew when to show up. Yep. You don't nowadays, typically bikinis at the end, because most people are coming for that. They've had to sit through 4, 5, 6 hours of show. So break it up during the day and have maybe there are a lot of contests now that are going over 2 days, which is okay, but break those up even more into morning, noon, and night, just so it's more palatable or more fun for the people that are going to watch it.
Do you think as well they should bring in? Well, firstly, I've got to say IFBB Pro League and the NPC here in Australia, they do a good job. They do it at an auditorium. Tony Doherty does definitely big auditoriums. He does time scheduling. He's really on the clock. He pushes the athletes to get out there. He does. I got to say, he's doing quite a great job. Do you think as well? I find the art of posing has gone, and I think we can enjoy a beautiful musical theatre presentation. I think people need to start, judging on posing. Maybe not the final score, but I think the effort someone will put towards a great routine that entertains us as spectators, I think that's worth its ticket as well. If we've got if it's like a theatrical like a circus, but a theatrical presentation of beautiful bodies just like the days of Sean Ray, Leland Brada, Rick Gaspari, and Lee Haney. I mean, that's where it kind of stopped. After Lee Haney, it kind of slowed down a little bit. What do you think?
I agree. There was a time, even in Olympia, where I think a third of the points awarded were for posing.
Yeah, and beautiful songs. Beautiful songs.
Right, and that was key. I would, I would caution my house guests against posing to music with lyrics, or typically, I think the safest thing to pose to is current movie music. Find Superman. Superman was coming out, so pose to Superman. Stuff like that. No, I think that art that's been lost. Again, if you had it in a legitimate auditorium, you could spotlight the person on stage.
Yes.
The problem now in these ballroom settings, they leave the lights on, so there's no drama. There's no focal point of the lights.
Yes.
They do a much better job in Europe, Prague, Alicante, Lisbon. I've been to a few shows over in Europe, and they do a much better job.
Okay. So you said there are 3 categories of people you've met. They're the people who can be where they're at without you, meaning bodybuilding. Others you're not sure of, and those who could have clearly done it on their own, And you talk about Jay Cutler possibly could have done it on his own. He actually has credited you, but you mentioned that the second time you invited him to stay at your home is when he decided not to pursue law enforcement and to pursue bodybuilding. Well, let's talk a little bit about Jay Cutler.
Yes. But he remembers me coming up to him in the gym and saying that he could be Mr. Olympia.
Wow.
I don't remember saying that, but at least he does.
Yes.
So
yes.
And he credits that second visit. When he first came out, like so many people also don't realize back in the day, why were there so many good bodybuilders coming to Venice? Gold's gyms, which were popping up all over the country, were having their own local contests called Gold's Classic.
Yep.
And so the winners of those would come out to Venice as either a prize, or the gym owner would support that trip.
Yep.
And I met Jay and Carrie in the gym, and I said, I congratulated him for winning the Boston Gold's Classic. And I said, well, by the way, where are you staying? And when he mentioned this motel, a really bad area of LA, it's actually not much better now. I said, well, you can come stay at my home. I don't want you staying there. And that was in mid, it might have been 94, early 94. Mm-hmm. And then I invited him back, or he asked to come back at the end of the year. I think while he was at my house, Lee Priest was there. He mentions Lee.
Yeah, he does.
So somehow that ignited, the desire to go for the pro card. And then he came out, and I don't know how long he stayed, but at the end of the year, I never really kept track of all of that. But yeah, he said that second visit kind of solidified his dream.
Without sounding, to be honest, he's on my vision board. And the reason he's on my vision board is that he won 2 in a row. And the one that he lost, usually no one comes back after their loss, and he comes back and wins 2 more. That's actually quite a feat in Olympia. No one's done that,
yeah.
So that's quite a feat. But can I just say this without sounding racist?
Mm-hmm.
He's the only white guy for a while.
Well, I mean, people.
I'm just saying, like
Yeah.
I mean, no, Africans, whatever color, they've got beautiful bodies, they've got beautiful lips, they've got beautiful skin, they've got beautiful eyes. They're probably some of the most beautiful people in the world structurally as well.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is, here comes this white guy, true American blood, American kind of dude, and he takes on, seemed to be this kind of advantage some people had, but then I think he worked hard and he did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. No, that's very true. I mean, he wasn't just like John Cena doesn't have the most blessed physique for wrestling,
Yes.
although he had great face. So Jay Cutler, you could argue, he wasn't, say, as gifted as someone like a Chris Bumstead
Yes.
in terms of, I mean, first off, he's 5'9.25",
Oh, okay.
which is a very difficult height in at least in America back then in NPC, because you're really you're too you're too short for the super heavy class or heavyweight class, but you're too tall for the light heavy.
Really? Okay.
So it's a very tough class to do well in, or a height to do well at.
Yep.
So yeah, that's kind of a handicap I would say he had.
Well, he worked it, didn't he?
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah, 5'11" seems to be the sweet spot, or the where a lot of the guys who got pro cards were at height wise.
Oh, I should have gone for it. I'm 5'11". Maybe one day I've got to check if I have some natural genetics. I don't know what natural genetics really are, but anyway. And you mentioned Lee Priest, and this is you said something like this: Lee Priest, possibly if you, and this is when we talk about the three types. You said Lee Priest, possibly if you never offered your home in 1993, he may not have had a career in the sport in America. He was stranded due to a promoter from American Muscle, which Lee also told me you said about, and he told Lee to buy a ticket. And you mentioned this guy did it to many people. Obviously, he borrowed money from his uncle, and then when he got there, he just kind of did not help him, and he was stranded. But you came along, so let's hear that story.
Yes, I mean, that's again, he was literally stranded. He was, I don't know if Irv Gelb, who's actually home I'm staying in right now, a famous LA physique photographer, was scouting the gym for talent, like so many of the photographers who got paid, per article, per photograph. He saw Lee Priest in the gym, and he brought him over to my office. And we had a studio in the office, and I said, "Oh my God, you can't leave. I'm going to take your picture." I had a Polaroid camera. I took his photo and FedExed it to Joe Weider. Yeah. And I think it was two days later we were having lunch with Joe, and he was offering him a contract. So that would give him money to remain in America. But it took Weider's office, which was another story, about 5 months to get him the contract and the money flowing. So during that time, he stayed at my home. So, he might have found someone else to stay with. He might have gotten spot. I don't know. I mean, but at least I had a major. And he wrote a book. You can. I encourage people to read it. It's very good, especially if you're a competitor, because he's got some training tips in there, which my book does not have. So, but in his book, he says, I think the chapter begins, Ed Connor saved my ass, my arse, Australian.
Arse. Yeah, ass. We say ass. But he did mention also that you named him as your biggest or freakiest or best bodybuilder of anyone, and he thought you'd mentioned the Barbarian Brothers or whoever they are and all these other people, but Lee was quite shocked that you would praise him. And I'll say, Lee's an anomaly. Do you know Lee is loved around the world? Loved. In Australia, I think we have a tall poppy syndrome here in Australia, right? We have this problem here. But when we talk about the world loves Lee could be, I'll tell you something. Lee could be the Joe Rogan of bodybuilding. Lee,
I could see that. Yeah.
Lee could be. He could talk to anybody: politicians, sporting people, professional car racing guys, fighter jet pilots. Lee would be able to sit down and have a conversation with anyone. Lee is an anomaly. What do you think? Was Lee one of your favorites, or one of your?
Well, certainly in terms of star quality, or being the greatest bodybuilder ever. Given what I knew at the time or know now, I would have to say yes, because he was a teenager. He turned 21 in my home.
Yep.
and I've seen photographs taken in Australia of him at, I don't know, 18 or 19. Now, I met Jay Cutler. He might have been 19 or 20, but he didn't have that. He wasn't stage ready.
Yeah.
Well, he'd won a contest back east, but and he freaked out when he saw Lee in the gym when he first came to Venice.
Yeah.
So in other words, again, Lee's the only thing unfortunate, Lee had going was his height, which is again 5'3", maybe 5'4". So if he'd been an inch or two taller, he'd be the same height as a Derek Lunsford or almost all the great 212 winners have been 5'5". So he's and they've gone on, actually, Derek went on to win the Open Mr. Olympia. So Lee's legs were a little bit too short for his frame, but still he had he had 21 and a half inch arms. I taped him at age 20 at 5'4", 5'3". So yeah, I mean, in terms of just mature muscle, plus I knew what he was doing because I was giving him everything he was taking, which is practically nothing.
Yes, I know. So, practically nothing. Remember that, Chris? That's a good hook. Practically nothing. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean.
What do you think about all the suspensions he got and everything going on? What do you think of that?
Well, he was outspoken. I'm outspoken. I admire that.
That's great. That's great.
And as I get older, I'm going to be more outspoken. I mean, my mom was totally unfiltered before she died, and I love that about her. And I don't mind being the same. And you see something going wrong, you've got to open your mouth and say something, I think.
Yeah, he's definitely he's loved, but
one of my biggest friends was Rich Piana.
Yeah, tell me about that was my next question. Yeah. Rich Piana, one of your friends. Tell me about it. He was out the 5% guy. Yes.
But I knew him since he was 19.
Go on.
I think he died at 46 or 47, but he was outspoken and people loved it. And
they did.
I was with him at expos, and he had the longest lines and he worked them. I don't know when he took a break to pee, because I would see him in Europe, be at his booth for 8 or 9 hours. He had the longest lines in Europe.
Yeah.
And he was always, he was like my partner Pete Gronkowski or Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was always always very encouraging.
He
like when Arnold says, Arnold would see one of my house guests at church on Sunday at 9:30 Mass at St. Monica's, and he would say, he would look unbelievable. He would go,
yes,
you look unbelievable.
Yes.
I mean, you could say, well, is it unbelievably bad or unbelievably good? But of course, my house guest thought he was saying they look great.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of positive enforcement that makes a huge difference. And Rich was great that way. And he really, I would bring him people to sponsor, and he would get he was like a new kid in a candy store with some new athlete that I had discovered. He always thought that I somehow found the most incredible people.
What was it? Just the body or just the face, or was it a package you looked for? Was it?
Well, it's a package. It's more than even the body and the face. It's also personality. No, its personality is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, working a booth is not easy, and so many of these guys I see, they're all covered up. They're bent over signing. In the old days, they were signing autograph. They were autographing a photo. But God damn it, this is not a poetry reading session. Take off your shirt. Pose with these people. Don't go to an expo or whatever out of shape or not dressed well. This is your audience. Arnold. When Arnold leaves his home, I mean, he knows he's on stage. He's got to be nice, and maybe he's having a bad day, but he knows he's got to be up for his fans.
Right.
So He goes down and goes in Venice at 9 o'clock in the morning when he's in town,
Yep.
and he'll take pictures with members. He'll sign, things, whatever. He's engaged with his audience, with his, which, too many of the guys are not that way now.
Yeah, you mentioned, so obviously church was an important part of the crowd, the people at the time. And I mean, obviously it'd be surprising to hear people talk about the church and, Arnold's there and other bodybuilders going there, which is wonderful to know. But you believe that there's never been a personality like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, and he's pretty much done what no one's done yet, and that is to become a Hollywood blockbuster movie seller.
Right. No, he's. I've met very few people who could walk into a room and without knowing anything about that person, you sense he must be something special.
Yeah.
He had that kind of charisma. Arnold has that. No, he's really he's an amazing person. I mean, and again, I've read both of his books and other books on him, and he has an amazing life story, and I think that inspired. I guess the biggest group of foreign bodybuilders I had were German, probably 24.
Yes,
and they certainly were. I think one reason I had so many from Germany was because of Arnold, even though of course he's Austrian, but still. He set the tone to be different. He dared to dream.
Yeah, he was. So what do you think? Yeah, he did dare to dream. I mean, but you created something, didn't you, Ed? Like, do you think it just, a light bulb went off in my head right now. Do you think, I know what Joe Weider was doing. I understand the magazines, but do you think it would have had like the home place, the meeting grounds and the place like Gold's? If Gold's wasn't around, could it have been as big? Do you think there would have been as many movie stars? Do you think you, without your hand in it, of a place, not about signing people up, meaning to put them on magazines. What I'm saying, you gave them what they needed to do to get to these magazines. You gave them what they needed to do to get on stage, meaning you gave them a gym, but you created a community. You created, you had created a hunger that, all right, if we're going to get to, say, Joe Weider, if we're going to get to that stage, we're going to have to go through Gold's Gym and take some notes or learn. Do you think so?
Yes, very much so. You have to, any gym owner has to create a community.
Yes.
That's very important. That's what we were family.
Yeah.
We actually had a separate company. Mm-hmm. It was called the Gold's Gym, entertainment division, pretty much, motion picture and entertainment division, where we actually, there was a fee to be a member of it, but we would actually try and get members work in the entertainment industry.
Wow.
So actually McFit Gym in Europe copied that idea. I mean, the Rainer Schaller, who's now dead, took that idea, I think, when he saw Gold's Gym Venice and incorporated it in McFit in Europe. So we would get hundreds of people work in the studios, ad agencies, whatever. But we gave all the magazines free access to the gym. We gave all the photographers, their staff, free memberships.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's what I'm saying to you. Without having a nest, how do the birds fly? They need a good nest. You had the nest.
Yeah. Joe Gold, he wasn't really a big fan. I've seen pictures taken in his gym, and World Gym. And I've seen some videos, but he wasn't a big fan of that. I don't think that happened very often. And Powerhouse was down there for a while, and it just, both those gyms were smaller, and to compete with Gold's Gym at the time, you really had to be bigger. And the photographers, they liked the fact that we had 4 rooms, and we had natural lighting and high ceilings, and it just we had a film studio. We actually gave Chris Lund, who was Weider's favorite photographer from England a dark room. This is back in the day when you needed dark rooms.
Wow.
So we were probably the only gym in the world with a dark room, right?
I mean, I don't know anyone that would do a dark room in a gymnasium. And some of the stuff you're talking about now, which we will get to in a little while, not right now, about what you're doing in relation to virtue stuff and wellness centers. But tell me something. I think you did something else. You got movie stars. Movie stars were coming to your gym. We're talking about you. Some of the bodybuilders told me who was in the gym at the time, and they were just gobsmacked by the sheer superstardom. Like, tell me some of the superstars that came through your gym.
I'm not very good at spotting celebrities.
Okay, but
I remember.
But go on.
I remember. I'm in my office, and my receptionist, who was right outside, started screaming, and I said, "What's wrong? What's happening?" And she says, "Oh, there's Keanu Reeves," and he had come in on a dirt bike, looking pretty dirty.
Yeah.
Or not like a movie star.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I would not have recognized him. And I remember I was going to the gym one time, and someone said, "Oh, Ed, there's 50 Cent," and I looked down at my feet. I thought there was a couple quarters in my feet, but it was it was a rapper, and I never listened to rap, so I mean I have no idea. I don't know how Kanye West or any of these people are.
What about some of the classic, like Sylvester Stallone? Did he come to your gym?
He did, and
because I'm saying he trained with Frank Columbo. I think Frank Columbo trained him.
No, he was trained. Danny Hester, I think, trained him.
Okay.
No, he would make a big. He would come usually in a limousine with bodyguards. So he made a big scene. It was probably the polar opposite of Keanu Reeves.
Oh, God love him.
So yeah, he. No, I had my favorites. The Fly, the actor that played the Fly was just in the movie Wicked, Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
He was one of my. I'd actually have lunch with him at the firehouse.
Okay.
And then. I guess the favorite was who just died was and he was a favorite of Lee Priest, was the James Caan, Jimmy Caan, who was in Godfather. Yeah.
Yes, James Caan, yes.
So there was a group of actors who were, some just came to the gym, like Charlie Sheen, to get in shape for a movie. He was playing a baseball player. Others were daily regulars, like Jimmy Caan.
But I think as well, when you talk about Stallone turning up in limousines, I think he also knew Gold's Gym was the place to keep that stardom going. So I think some did actually probably come to your gym due to popularity and helping their status by obviously.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was, yeah.
Well, no, this was an era. Keep in mind too. This was an era when AIDS was rearing its ugly head.
Yes.
And so a lot of movie stars, celebrities wanted to be associated with health and fitness.
Yes.
And Weider, took advantage of that or understood that. He never, as far as I know, he never paid anybody to be on his cover or in his magazine.
Wow.
So he would get these people, these stars. I'm sure Stallone was on the cover. I know Arnold was many times.
Many times.
So and the inside he would show them, or Men's Fitness too, or Shape, the women. So yeah, they wanted to be associated. They wanted to say, I'm healthy. I don't have whatever. And no, that was a big deal.
What about singers? What about rock stars? Did you get any kind of like?
Yeah, I remember. I'm not good with names, but I remember some of the rock stars had female trainers.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, I wish I could remember some names for you. Yeah,
that's all right. But I can only imagine what it was like. I think it was the scene. I think that you just created this atmosphere.
Yeah.
It was just a wonderful place to be, And
well, it was like a 3-ring circus, because there were 4 rooms, which made it seem bigger than it was.
Yep.
And you'd have a photo shoot going on in each room.
Mm-hmm.
and again, because there's no social media, people would be afraid they're going to miss something, so they hung out outside, or they'd go train, they'd go to the firehouse to eat, they'd come back and see what they missed, or just hang around. It was, or training twice a day was popular.
Yeah,
So it was,
that's right.
yeah. So it was, it was just, it was an amazing place, really.
Oh, no, you did. You credited me. Well, you said that today, now with social media, you can become famous from anywhere. But back in the 80s and 90s, you had to come to Gold's Gym to become famous. And the magazines didn't necessarily send out their photographers, so they waited for the talent to come here.
Right. They were lazy and cheap that way.
Lazy and cheap. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a shame in a way, because, but no, they were, they would wait. And actually, in fairness to them, I would always encourage the guys to get photographed after their contest, wait several days, because inevitably they always look better two or 3 days later than they did on stage.
100%, 100% they look better.
Yeah, most of them didn't. They misjudged their diet or their peaking.
Yeah, no.
So I can't think of. It's hard to think of anybody who wasn't better a couple of days later. Some of them blew it. Some of them blew up too much. I mean, I know some guys could put on 30 pounds in a day, mostly water weight. But no, it was. So in fairness, they'd come back to LA, and Rita would fly them back. Even he would fly athletes out to be photographed. But his photographers, weren't going to fly to them with all their equipment.
Yes.
They would use Venice.
So Mike Francois, Paul DeMeo, Mike Matarazzo, Jim Quinn were some of your favorite guests, and say bodybuilders. Who's your favorite bodybuilder to watch, like, through the ages? If you had to, like, were they your favorite? Who was your favorite bodybuilder? And my next question is, out of all the Olympian winners, we can go as far back as you want to most recent, who do you reckon is the number one?
Well,
I know it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Well, I still like Jay.
Jay, wow, go ahead. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I in fact, recently, looking back at videos or pictures, I have to say he was pretty darn incredible.
Yep.
Some of the current or more recent winners to me are too big. There's no athleticism there. It's not aesthetic as I see it.
Yep.
In fact, the show that Lee lost the one time, or in between the wins, I think he weighed, I don't know, 20, 25 pounds more than he had when he won.
Yep. So
again, by cutting down, he actually looked. So it's about creating that illusion on stage.
It is an illusion, yes.
Yeah. So it's hard for me also to disassociate the physique and the face from the personality. And Jay has come a long way in terms of developing a personality or being more outgoing.
Yeah. Was he quite shy? Was he quite shy?
Yeah, I think he was quiet. He wasn't, he wasn't Mr. Excitement, I guess.
You're going to be on his podcast soon, is that correct? Am I right in saying that?
Right. I'm going to be in Vegas in 2 weeks. He invited me to be on his podcast.
Oh, that's right. I asked you to get it. He's not going to come on, but I have watched him look at some of my messages, but he's never replied. I mean, I can understand. I'm just an Aussie guy in Australia, which was blessed to have Ed Connors on and a few others. Speaking about Mike Francois and Paul DeMeo and Mike Matarazzo, apparently in relation to Mike Matarazzo and his passing, which was from synthol, you mentioned on a podcast that you felt a little guilty. Now, the reason I'm asking that question is, well, obviously your emotions got at something you felt. What do you mean by feeling guilty? And maybe you can explain that to us in a little bit more detail.
Well, I don't know with Mike if I felt guilty. I saw him before he died, and I said, I expressed my concerned, my regrets that, Mike, do you feel, bad? Or was it a mistake to pursue bodybuilding?
Yes, yes.
And he said no. He said, I would have been dead probably a lot sooner.
Wow.
And again, I didn't know he was, doing apparently what killed him. But he was, no, he had been all over the world. He's been to more countries than I have, and I've traveled a lot. So no, he said he's had a great life, and again, what really killed him? I mean, his dad died young, so a lot of genetics is in play there.
Okay. Yep.
And he was married 5 times.
Oh,
which,
yes.
I mean, that's got to take a toll on his heart. I would imagine.
Yep.
So no, I really, you can only do so much. I mean, if I don't really blame myself, or I don't know that I feel any guilt for anyone, because it's just, there's only so much, I try. And again, if people aren't going to be honest with you as to what they're doing, I can't really advise. I can't, I can't warn them, perhaps.
I think that's where I got the idea when you said you felt guilty. I think you felt guilty that you wish you could have done something to help, maybe got in a bit, like whatever it is, as friends or people that we have around us. If only I could have helped. You know what I mean?
I would have advised him. I mean, I was the best man in one of his marriages.
Yeah.
But had he, asked my opinion maybe about some of the other wives, I would have said don't.
Yeah, apparently if you had a chance, you'd tell people, look, I'll pay for the wedding, the party, but just don't get married. Just don't get married.
Well, that was how I felt about Paul DeMeo.
Yeah.
I didn't go to the wedding. I regret it now, but I would have gone there and just said, I'll pay for the party, but the wedding is off, because it lasted less, I think, than 2 years. And he shot an unregistered gun off in the backyard of his home, and a neighbor reported it, and he went to jail for a year, and his wife divorced him.
Yeah.
That he never really recovered from that. He died 10 years later.
Yeah.
So, I was very skeptical about a lot of marriages. I mean, it got to be so bad, I would wait a year to give a wedding present.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So people,
go on.
So people would always ask, did you get a gift from Ed? And if they did, they knew I was blessing the marriage. If they didn't get a gift from me, they knew I didn't think it was going to last.
Wow, Chris, we've got to use that. We don't send gifts until they give us 12 months trial or 2-year trial. Wow, that's perfect. What a waste of money, isn't it?
Well, it is a waste of money. I mean, because I was a gym owner. I had to give a decent gift. And I remember Matt Duvall, a very, very good bodybuilder, who I was at he's now deceased, but I was at his marriage. I was the only guest at his marriage in Vegas. I went to a lot of Vegas weddings.
Yeah.
And they call them destination marriages or weddings in the U.S. And they hadn't hired a photographer. I mean, they were doing the wedding on the cheap. And I had a camera back then, I think a throwaway. And by the time I got my film developed, they had already separated.
Chris, he married that.
So he married a woman with 2 or 3 kids. So, I mean, that was, and he's trying to pursue a pro bodybuilding career. He then got into pro wrestling, and then he opened a gym. So he suddenly got 3 things going on, plus a newlywed wife and with 2 or 3 kids. So, I mean, is that not a recipe for disaster?
It's funny you say that, because Chris is, I've told you, a cinematographer, and obviously he's done some reception photography, weddings, christenings, and he just laughed at what you just said. He goes, by the time he developed their film, they were already divorced.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something here, and I want you to kind of relate. You said, I'm asking you, do people really start bodybuilding due to self-esteem issues?
I think so, yes. unfortunately, the average American is 5'9", and I think a lot of it's due to wrestling in school, where they have to make weight. And so many of the people join a gym, I think, to build muscle because they're self-conscious about their height,
I agree.
and that affects their self-esteem. And if you've traveled to Europe, I mean, you can spot the people from Scandinavia or Netherlands because they're so tall, or Germans. There's a major difference it's probably in our diet, but America is the only industrialized society whose average height is decreasing.
Why?
We don't know why.
Do you think it's pesticides? What's in our food products?
It's probably all of that. Yeah.
It's incredible. That's true. And you mentioned that 6'3" is the perfect height for bodybuilding.
No,
perfect height. Sorry, perfect. 6'3" is the perfect height for wrestling, but
Right.
not for bodybuilding. Is that right?
Yeah, I think
Sorry,
6'2",
yes.
which is what Arnold was, or Gunther Schlierkamp and Rich Piana were close to that. That's kind of the maximum height you can be, and probably hope that you could do well. I'm a big fan of Jamie Christian Johal in England, and he's 6'5" and had a beautiful physique.
Yep.
But he didn't do well competing. I think he should have done much better. I didn't agree with the judges. But had I met him when he was younger, I would have tried to get him into pro wrestling. But he's now on a game show in England, like the American Gladiators, and I think doing fine. But yeah, again, a really rare tall person with incredible proportions.
Well, you mentioned that chasing numbers, body weight numbers, does not help you win or come in symmetrically well structured, unbalanced physique. And a lot of the problems, the ones that have or had problems, are trying to get heavier on the scale. And there's no beauty, no athleticism. The beauty is gone.
Right.
Yeah, that were your words. Just saying.
Right.
And talking about wrestling and John Cena, you said that apparently, maybe now he's 47, but he was a bit restricted in being able to do any movie he wanted to. Is that right? Is that because of contracts? People hold on to contracts or management? What is it? What you mentioned that on a podcast recently. John Cena's going to come out in a big way now. Like, I think he's got more freedom. Is that true?
Well, there's the WWE has new owners, so
Yep.
I think things are changing. Yeah, they've been through some management changes the last couple of years. He's actually in Budapest right now filming a movie on the Matchbox toy series.
Well, you mentioned that he was doing all the odd jobs around the gym, and obviously he would put in the sacrifice, like you mentioned, to get where he is. He's obviously one of the most famous bodybuilders, and the Ultimate Warrior. What was he like?
He was intense. He was. What you see in the ring was what he was like in person.
Did you manage him?
No, I've never managed anyone. No.
You just encouraged, obviously supported them, friendships. You mentioned just before, classic. You believe classic is the classic category is the future, and we mentioned,
Yeah, I think so. Given the crowd reaction I see,
and also you mentioned that you feel that prize money isn't according, and that short open bodybuilders win less, and could that be racism against short people?
I don't call it racism, but
no, it's a joke. Sorry, we got Aussie humor. Sorry about that.
Okay, but no, it's definitely prejudice. It's definitely
prejudice.
It's not fair. I mean that's total height discrimination. Just like I all the years that I knew Joe Weider, I always said you've got to make the Miss Olympia money as much as the Mr. Olympia money.
Yes.
Because you're really again that's sexist or that's not right. And same way now with all the they're going to have all these categories, then they've got to all pay the same amounts of money. I think otherwise you're really I don't think it's not right. Period.
Yeah.
I'll leave it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of people put in their sacrifice. One of your sayings is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. So you said there was so much missed opportunity, people not utilizing their God-given talent.
Yeah. I don't know if that saying is American and you don't have it in Australia, but
No,
yeah,
we do.
you can.
We do.
Yeah, but you can only do so much, and I guess very few people ever ask about the people that sort of got away or that I thought could have gone so far but didn't do it.
Tell me about them.
Well, the biggest disappointment I would say would be Joe Millionaire.
Yeah.
Evan Marriott was a 6'5", athlete, bodybuilder I saw in the gym in Venice, and I came up to him and said, "Are you interested in pursuing, pro wrestling?" And he said no. But a year later, he was pretty much homeless, and he had seen John Cena suddenly rise to fame, or at least. And he came to me and said, "Ed, is that offer still open?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "By the way, I need a place to stay. Can I stay at your home?" And I said, "Sure." So he stayed actually, he and Frank McGrath stayed nearly 2 years at my home, which Frank stayed at 4 different houses, but Evan stayed at my last home in Venice. And, he made $1 million. The premise of the show was that he was a millionaire, but in fact, he was a construction worker and had no money. And he ended up, being, he's one of those guys who's a natural actor.
Bless you.
And thank you. And I remember sitting in his bedroom in my home, watching him on television on the last episode of Joe Millionaire, which was seen by I think 43 million people. And he was wearing the same thing in the room that he was wearing on TV. And he was offered after that a chance to go out for the new Superman role.
Yep.
And he wouldn't take acting lessons. So he's now back in Southern California, running a tractor. He was truly a construction worker, and he loved that, and so he went back to doing it. But besides going to wrestling school at one point, so I think he could have been another John Cena had he pursued that. So, I opened that door, and again, I guess I had this vision for him as becoming a major TV star, and unfortunately, it didn't happen. But I don't blame myself. I just, I'm really disappointed at what might have been.
What? This might sound silly. You don't manage them. You don't manage them. They come in your home. And you mentioned, I guess, the bit they're supposed to take photos at your gym and promote your gym. What did you get out of all this, Ed? What was it about you? What did you get out of this? I want to know what you got out of it.
Well, as I said in my book, I got to play God. I changed a life.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and he was going to be living on the street when I met him, and he did make $1 million, and he has an incredible story to tell his kids, his family, at some point in his life.
So in other words, you answer to God.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying you did it because you were told to by God, in a way. Like,
well, no, not by God. I don't. I don't talk to God.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know. Don't we talk to God?
Well, I think we pray, but we don't necessarily. I'm suspicious of these televangelists who talk to God in America.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm not saying that you actually talk to him. That you've got a direct line. What I'm saying to you is, I'll give you an example.
Well,
I
to
know.
Me, life,
Go on. I was gonna say this. For me, I'm never worried what someone thinks of me, and the reason I don't worry what someone thinks of me is because I'm more worried what God thinks of me, and that means if someone thinks I lied to them, but I didn't, I don't really need to convince them. I think I can walk away knowing that God knows the truth. I can't talk to God, but I just know that's all I have. I can answer to him. Is it like answering to him? That's what I was asking? Yeah.
I think it's more about the premise of religion, or at least what it should be, which is it's all about love. You love one another like you love yourself.
Okay. Well, I mean, I find it very hard at the moment with what I see and what's going on. And you mentioned about the churches, but you also mentioned the key advice to be successful and to stand the chance and succeed is moving to a big city. Why?
Just more opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think small towns can be very petty. It's like Peyton. I know you're probably too young for Peyton Place.
No.
But where people they're friendly because they want to get to know you, because they want to gossip.
Oh.
So in other words, in fact, I could give you an example. I mean, Paul DeMeo and Mike Matarazzo trained together occasionally back in the Gold's Gym in outside Boston. Here we're talking, big city, Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And everybody thought that Paul DeMeo would be a pro bodybuilder before Mike Matarazzo. And so when Mike got his pro card first, he came back to Boston before packing up and coming back to LA. And so people then would give, Paul DeMeo a hard time about, how come you're not a pro? And they would also talk negatively about Mike going to California. So there was you would think both of them would be small town, or big town heroes that people would want to see make it. But no, they all they got were negative feedback back there. In fact, that's probably one reason, Paul got in trouble and went to jail, was he had no, support from family and friends. He got into drugs with people back there. I mean, he died from a heroin overdose. He didn't die from steroids.
Yeah.
So there again, there's another person. When he died, he died from steroids.
No.
But he died, and the drug dealer that sold him a hot batch because he owed him money, his training partner died 2 days later. And I tried to get the Boston newspaper to run a story on this drug dealer who never saw justice, who basically killed 2 people.
Very sad story. Very sad story.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want, because Dennis Wolf, who stayed with you, became an American citizen, and you asked him why, and he said, a country that you can get your driver's license and sit the test for 30 minutes and pay $35 is your type of country, is his type of country.
Right.
So what you're saying is there's a lot of opportunity in America. Yeah, there's heaps of opportunity in America.
Right. Well, he, like a number like Gunther or like a lot of German bodybuilders, they were ready to kind of, I think, give up, and then they never been to America, and then they saw here it's a whole different. In Germany, well, it's different now. I go to FIBO in April in Cologne every year. I've been going for 35 years, and Germany has changed. But back in the 80s and 90s, if you were a Gunther Schlierkamp or a Dennis Wolf, well, Dennis came over in 2004, but that was still, you were a freak back home, much more than even in America. Now it's more accepted. They're not as rigid a society. But back then, they were amazed to come over here, and people treated them like gods because of Arnold. They talk like Arnold, they look like Arnold, and so you're a guy. Yeah.
And they probably saw the opportunity. If Arnold can do it, we can do it.
Well, they know that there'll never be another Arnold, but I think they knew that they could have some measure of success because, I mean, Gunther, in fact, walking around, he said, "Ed, you're right. People think I'm a movie star." Because he would be walking the streets in LA and people would come up to him and like, who are you? You must be someone famous. Because he was 6'2" or close and 300 and some pounds.
Yeah.
And no, he and Dennis Wolf the same way. So many, I could go down a whole list of German house guests, and frankly, it was the ones that stayed here that have done better, I think, than most of the ones that have gone back to Germany.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, apparently so. Well, can I just want to segue in and out for a minute. Steroids. Apparently, steroids are different in Europe. They're a thicker oil. Is that true?
They are different, and it's always that. I don't know if you have the expression in Australia, the grass is always greener.
Yeah,
on
we
the
have
other
that
side.
expression. Yeah, we have that expression. Yes.
Well, so American bodybuilders would think that steroids were better from Europe, and European bodybuilders would think Americans had better steroids.
Oh,
So-
that's funny.
So there was a lot of interesting interaction between my house guests, my foreign versus domestic. So yeah, but there is a difference. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, do you think opportunity is dying? Opportunity to invest for the future when just being in the present is so tough? I believe opportunities and risks in the past didn't take so much thought or resistance, but it's changed a little bit now. What do you think about that?
I think that's true. I think that's true. As I said, the American dream is not dead, but it's not what it used to be, in my opinion. I mean, life is so much more complicated, or not as simple or innocent. Maybe it'll be better, but I mean, how did we get along without our phones back then?
But don't you think as well we did something with our money? We really invested our money. Like, we really put it towards something. We didn't I don't know about you, but gym clothing was really rugged, meaning you wore a t-shirt till it basically you could see your body through it, right? You know what I mean? Our tracksuits. Yeah. We didn't go and wear Nikes. The gym was a rugged place where you didn't turn up necessarily fashionable. You turned up, your physique spoke about, said it all, not your fashion. But today we're spending so much money on clothing, so much money on the bling, cars, where before, even myself, we would be spending money on bricks and mortar. We'd be spending money, I don't know, it was just, and at the same time, there was room for fun, there was room for savings, and there was also room for discipline. But I'm finding it's very skewed at the moment.
I would agree, but maybe we're just, two older men that have that.
No, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, God's sake. What do you think about Sam Sulek?
I don't really know him. Haven't followed him.
Okay, well, yeah, he's apparently the biggest one. I don't know much about him either, but apparently everyone's talking about him. Hey, Ed, are you married?
No.
Did you ever get married?
No.
Can I ask why? Has anyone asked you that question? Can I be the first?
I've been asked it, and I talk about it in my book, in my audio book. So I will ask people to read the book and get the book. We're going to talk about or listen to it. I get very detailed in my narrative in the audio.
Can you give us something small, like a scoop here? Just something to make them go. Something to make them go finish it in the book. What could you tell? What could you say? Was it just that? Was it just that? I don't know. I'm going to say something funny as an Aussie, and I don't want to. So tell me something. Tell me. You go.
No, it's just first off, I don't know how I could have done what I did and be happily married or have a family.
Okay.
So I applaud people who are able to do something, like that, but it wasn't. I could never visualize it for myself.
All right.
And
tell me two questions on that, and then I won't dive in any further. Do you regret it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I don't know. I know very few happily married people.
That's true, but I mean, all right. So,
in fact, we're now in America, over 50% of Americans now are not married or not. They live alone or not with somebody. So no, I really again, I've seen so many divorces, and a lot of them surprised me. I mean,
I was married. I was married, got divorced, and I didn't see it coming. And actually, I had the long game in place, but you can't change someone that doesn't have the long game in place.
I mean, almost every week I hear, a friend getting divorced, and I'm shocked, frankly. I didn't see it coming, but I did, no, it just and there's so many unwanted kids. Well, like John Cena. I mean, John Cena is married, but his first wife didn't want kids. He's now married to a woman I assume doesn't want to have children, and at his age he shouldn't. She shouldn't, or he'll be 48 and she's probably in her 40s, and that's not a good idea. So yeah, I have friends with Down syndrome kids. I have a surprising number of friends with Down. I mean, what a crucifix that is to bear. A cross to bear your life.
Yeah. Well, my next question is, do you want to get married?
Actually, yeah. At this stage in my life, if I met a woman...
Oh, right. That is awesome. Keep going. Yeah.
If I met a woman who enjoyed traveling, enjoyed my interests, I would, yes. One of my companionship, sure.
Well, then make sure I get an invitation to the wedding, because I'm asking the question. So, all right, so you would get married, because that's what I think. I think at the end of the day, we should ask that question. To be honest, I'd like to get married again. I would. Yeah. I would to get married again.
It's sad to die alone, but I have a lot of single friends who I think will be there for me at that time.
Yeah, no, I think marriage is funny. And it's scary. It wasn't so scary in the past. It's scary now. But I like you, I'd like to get married again. I do believe, and maybe you believe it too, but I do believe the love of your life is still there somewhere. I do believe that. The love of your life is out there still. And so you were told, if you told someone they were small 3 times in one day, they'd kill themselves. You had to be very careful as to what you said to people, and because you didn't lie and you wanted to be, you kind of hid behind the curtain, that's a figure of speech, so that you didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Right.
Yeah. Jesus. That powerful?
Well, again, I would never be negative. I would always be encouraging. And that's what I loved about Arnold, or taking people to meet Arnold. Yeah. Is he would always be, him telling them you look great, means a lot more than me telling them they look great. But at least when I told them they look good, they knew I wasn't bullshitting them. And, like a lot of these.
So Arnold would just, exaggerate a little bit for them, They'd take it. Yeah,
right. You've got to be, and I think that's true with parenting. You've got to be positive and encouraging. And again, so many of my house guests, were raised by grandmothers. They had no real mother or father in their lives. I met with my production company yesterday regarding the theatrical rights to my book, and I mentioned J.D. Vance, who's a vice president now, because he wrote a book called Hellbilly Elegy, and it was turned into a Netflix movie. It's well worth reading or watching. But he basically was raised by his grandma, and I said, his story, he's actually was in better shape. I mean, he went to Yale and is now vice president. So actually, he came out of it better than most of my house guests. But I mean, I said his story is similar to hundreds of my house guests who were probably raised by grandmothers, had no money growing up, mom or dad on drugs. So I think part of coloring my feelings towards marriage or having a family, was shaped by what I saw with my house guests. I mean, in fact, I've changed my view on abortion because of all of this. Being a Catholic, you're supposed to be against abortion. I'm now all for it because I think there are a lot of people better off not being born. So, what I've seen personally has had a huge effect on how I feel about that. And given the Catholic faith, there's sort of room to believe that that baby is reincarnated, is born again somewhere else in a different life. But no, I tragic story. I mean, read Hillbilly Elegy, and the guy is now vice president. Yeah, he did. He wasn't like Trump, who was born into money. So he has a whole different perspective on life, I hope. And his wife's Indian, so she probably has seen unimaginable poverty.
Yeah, most definitely. It's funny. There's some people. Do you know? Even Lee Priest. What I've realized with Lee, he really goes with the flow. He's not really pursuing anything, but somehow things come to him. I think he could double down on a few things and really do really well. But I don't know why he doesn't double down on certain things, because I think he can be amazingly successful. He's successful now. If you're listening to this, Lee, you're doing an amazing job in everything you're doing. But I just think someone called him, he's a phenom. Someone said, but he's an anomaly. There's something about Lee. I don't know. There's something about Lee. He could also be a movie star as well. He could actually be in the movies himself, like some kind of action hero, you name it.
Well, he was actually it's in my book, but the director of the Batman movie wanted him to play Bane.
No way.
Yeah, it's in my book. Yeah, read my book.
Why didn't he do it? Why didn't he?
He unfortunately, because the woman he cast to be the female, bad woman, was so much taller than Lee. So he actually hired another house guest of mine, Jeep Swenson, who was 6'5".
Jeez.
So yeah, Ivy was her name. Poison Ivy was
Ivy
was played by a very good actress, but she was a tall woman, and so it's in my book and actually Lee's book as well.
Oh,
but
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, well, he's very private too. He doesn't share too much. He shares some interesting stories, predominantly kind of risque ones, but I didn't know all that stuff about him. But look, to be honest, I love reading, but I never was a good reader, meaning, forgive me if I haven't read your book yet. It's not that I wouldn't read it. I'm just the type of person, I'm a bit of a daydreamer. I probably have to read the page 3 times before I go to the next page.
Well, listen to the audio book. I narrated it.
Oh, good. Okay. Oh, that's good.
It's 7 hours, and actually it's 5,000 words more, so there's more detail.
I think I'm going to do that. So
yeah,
you mentioned there's something different about America than the rest of the world. In America, they will take chances where other countries say, you pay me and I'll train. Where Americans will say, I'll go for it, I'll sacrifice. Is this true still to today?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
I still talk to a lot of foreign fitness people, foreign bodybuilders, gym owners, and I think that's still true. I think that's still true.
Okay, and you explain. And there's another thing you say. Please explain "Dare to Dream."
Well, that's just it. If you've got some sort of God-given talent, and you think you can go far doing whatever, you need to be self-confident enough to dare to dream, but you also need to work hard enough to execute on your dream. And I still like my own story, or many of the people that I know that have had success in the fitness world. I think that's key. That you've got to have this dream. It might be an impossible dream, but you give it. I always encourage my house guests to give it at least 3 years.
Well, we've been doing this podcast for a bit over 1.5 years, and I'll probably ask you for your advice shortly, but you also mentioned you can't look back and say, what if? You took a lot of risk, some crazy stuff. You're still doing crazy stuff. You can't look back. You got to live in the moment. Tell us about that phrase. It's one of yours.
Well, I think, I mean, again, I've read a lot of biographies, and everybody, that's one of the key themes is you've got to live in the present. You've got to learn from your mistakes, but you don't need to look back to the past and think about all the what ifs. And you can't plan too far in the future, especially now with the way the technology is changing. I think a 5-year plan is ridiculous. So, maybe have a 1-year plan or a 3-year plan, but yeah, you've got to organize and to achieve that dream. Like move to a bigger city. Don't wait. Don't. One thing on the internet I see so much of, especially with the fitness world, is you've got to pay your dues. You've got to be in your 30s. You'll see in my book that almost everybody I encouraged was way under 30.
You also mentioned, you also said you really encourage, not that you're an advocate for steroids, but you said something that you think no one should touch anything, especially up until the age of 21 or 22. And you also don't encourage many people back then to compete after the age of 30. Things have changed a little bit now, but that was kind of your philosophy.
It's still my philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still your philosophy.
Unfortunately, or for whatever, a lot of the people I met, in fact, had used steroids as teenagers. But of course, the dosages back then were tiny compared to what I see now. But yeah, your body, your own natural production doesn't really cut off until 21 or 22. Yep. So I think you first, let's see what your own body can do. Don't stop it. Don't stop the natural growth. And then over 30 is when people begin getting hurt. Now, Paulo Amato is a tremendous Canadian bodybuilder that I introduced to Rich Piana to get sponsorship.
Yep.
And he was, I think, 35 or 34. So you could say, well, Ed, what about Paulo? Doesn't he break your rule? But Paulo started late.
Okay. So
if you started at 30 and but it's the guys that started, teenagers are in their early 20s and are still trying to turn pro at 30. They've been basically working their body pretty hard for 10, 11, 12 years. And, I think the danger to tear something increases dramatically. So that's...
Yeah. Well, I'm 55 and I've got no injuries and I've pushed. But I'll say, we're close to the end now, Ed, just to let you know, we are close to the end. But the thing is, I want to ask you, this is my philosophy. I told you about my calories philosophy. I believe if you start to abuse steroids early, this is what I believe, that automatically your brain or automatically your body says, oh, he's getting it from somewhere else. I don't need to produce it. When I don't need to produce it. So what I'm saying is, as you mentioned, you're seeing bodybuilders taking steroids today and they're looking great. But do you think they've got to? Because if they don't, what's going to produce it? Because sometimes the body does funny things, and I feel I'm not against that. I'm not on any testosterone replacement therapy or anything like that. And actually, I choose not to be. And the reason I choose not to be is because I choose my diet, I choose the gym, and I choose my vanity. I just want to believe it. And I believe it so heartedly that, and I went and got my bloods done and my testosterone was very high, but it's because, like you said, you got to believe it. And I believe if I can somehow manipulate what's already there for me, food, go to the gym and still push heavy weight, but not stupidly, but push weight, and eat well. And also, I mean, I'm not saying I'm the most attractive man in the world. I'm not saying that. But I grew up with a father that believed he was. And I admired that because he thought he was the best at everything. He was the most handsome guy. But I enjoyed that he believed it. It didn't matter what I believed. So what do you think? Sometimes I feel people should, what do you think about that theory that if you start dabbling in an area, you're going to be so reliant that your body's not going to know how to produce it itself?
Well, I think that's certainly true if you start, before 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shuts down. Yeah, it doesn't produce any. So, no, I think that's very true. I really can't. It's science. It's it's, if you start taking anything in small dosages and then increase it and keep going at some point. In fact, that's the reason back in the 80s and 90s, the guys would go on, say, just 2 cycles a year. They would go on for 3 or 4 months and off for 3 or 4 months. And then, so they would do 2 cycles a year. So they were really off half the year.
Yep.
I don't hear that now, that same routine.
Everyone's on testosterone. Everyone's taking this, and they're young guys. And I'm thinking to myself, every day.
I need to clarify that when they get off, they're still taking some, but nothing like they were taking. They might have gone from 750 milligrams a month to 200.
Yeah.
But no, I think again, your body builds up a tolerance, and you've got then to take more to have the same effect. But back then, the guys were taking long breaks.
Well, Lee said he couldn't wait to get off it after the comps. He'd get off it. Even Ronnie Coleman said he stopped it when it was off season. I suppose the other question I was going to say, which maybe no one's asked, have you taken steroids, Ed?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. Where, at what age or when, and do you know?
In my 30s, yeah. I wanted to see what, I was curious what the effect was going to be. Yeah.
And how did you go?
I mean, to me, I thought they worked. Yes.
And obviously you didn't compete because you had, because of genetics, apparently. I don't know.
Or
being a businessman, maybe just focusing on
business.
I
mean, I was busy. I was working 100 hours a week, and it would be nonsensical for me. And it's certainly not good for, I think, gym owners in general to compete or run contests. So, yeah.
So how long did you take steroids for?
Probably for about 5 years.
Okay, and you saw a change. Maybe you got to send us a photo so we can put it up here since you mentioned it. I think you should. I think you send us a photo so when we mention this part, we can put it up on the YouTube, up on the screen.
There weren't cameras back then like there are now for those kind of pictures. It's in fact, it's kind of frustrating. I have very few photos of me.
What's your dominant part? What was your dominant body part?
Probably my legs. I would go biking every day for at least an hour and more on weekends, and I'm still walking 10 to 20,000 steps a day.
Okay, and do you go to the gym?
Occasionally.
Okay, and I'll just let you know, my first cycle, I did a cycle as well. I'll make it fair that we share my one. I mean, everyone's heard it anyway, but I was I did it at 49. I was turning 50, and I thought, I'll do a cycle. So I did 2 cycles in a year. And what I found was, I put on some size, but I still found the fundamentals needed to be there, which was reassuring that I did have to eat, rest, and train hard. So it was kind of like I just had a bit better fuel. So tell me now, you're doing, there's 2 things you're looking into. You're looking into, or you think the new gym, before I say that, you reckon there's more in nutrition now than there is in business, learning and teaching people about nutrition than it is teaching them about exercising. Is that correct? Nutrition is the big thing right now?
I don't know that I would phrase it that way. I think certainly being a personal trainer right now, you need to know more about nutrition.
That's what I meant.
Than you used to. Yeah. You can't just be all about training anymore.
No, it's all about nutrition. And tell me something about this new gym chain, the regenerative services. You think there should be these little places where people come and get blood tests twice a year, and it's either inside a gym or it's next to a gym, and you believe that's the way to go in the future today?
I think that could change the health of America. If every American got a blood test twice a year and had it analyzed and got supplements based on the results, and explored other kinds of regenerative medicine services, testosterone therapy, growth hormone, cold plunge, infrared, saunas, whatever. I think there's that could be a next avenue for gyms to explore because
Well, they're
of the
doing
change.
they're doing
Yeah.
it here in Australia.
Yeah. But send me information. I'll send you my business plan, but I'd love to see what you have going on there.
Yeah, please do that. Please share me that, and I'll tell you what we're doing here, or what people are doing here. We've got a lot of those centers. I mean, heaps of them opening up actually. And you're also doing something is it in Vegas? And it's Virtue.
Well, that's all part of that project in Vegas.
So explain that to us, because I found it quite intriguing, because it's basically, are you actually exercising? What are you doing?
You're exercising. There's the founder of bodybuilding.com has opened 3 gyms in Idaho, well, one in San Francisco called Black Box VR.
Yep.
Where you put on a headset and you're strapped into a machine, and you get a very good 25-minute workout using that technology. So and you don't really, I'm not a gamer. I've tried it. I was impressed. I've had bodybuilders go on it. They told me they probably couldn't do it more than 3 times a week. It's so intense.
Really?
So, yeah. So for people that need to be entertained or need to be motivated or don't know what to do, it's a perfect solution.
Is it patches, like they patch you up in it, and then it vibrates, or it bounces?
No.
What does it do? What do you do?
Well, you're strapped into go to Black Box VR website and look at it.
Black Box.
But basically you're strapped into a machine and get the machine uses AI to know your strength level, so it can increase it over time. So it's kind of a perfect combination of a virtual plus AI.
Are you in just one spot?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are you moving?
You're moving your body parts. Yes.
And how does it put pressure?
It's a resistance cable.
A resistance cable. And I tend to agree. I think the future's going to be that way. Why do you see it being that way? Why are you investing in that?
Well, because millennials and Gen Z are not going back to the gym in the same number as people in the 80s or 90s their age. Mm-hmm. And baby boomers aren't going back either in the same number. So we need to make it more entertaining or more interesting. Or we basically, 80% of Americans say they would go to a gym if they knew what to do. My model, you don't need to know how to do anything.
All right. So tell me, do they have to come to a center to do this?
Yes, because the machine costs $25,000. So, I mean, Tony Robbins, was so impressed with my presentation that he actually flew to Idaho to try it out. He bought one, put it on his plane to take back to Florida.
Wow.
So he's big into high tech for working out, and he's in his 60s.
What do you think of Tony Robbins?
Amazing story again.
4 fathers apparently, or something like that.
Yeah. He's just fathered another child. No, he's an amazing individual.
He is an amazing individual. So this VR thing, I'm with you. If I could invest in it, I would, and I'd be the first one to do it in Australia, because I think it would work. But I reckon, how else this would work as well, Ed? In the future, not so far down the track, you'll be able to use your idea, and think about this, that people can train from their home. Eventually, they can, because if they've got a VR and you send the app or whatever it is they download on their own VRs, you could actually be training people all around their homes in America and the world.
Well, you could. I mean, that may be the future. I mean, again, nothing is changes the one constant in life, and just like when I bought Gold's. In fact, this Friday is the 46th anniversary of when Pete, Tim, and I bought Gold's Gym on February 28th, 1979.
Well, happy birthday!
But that was a 4,500 square foot gym. So the gym has evolved. I mean, that's what I don't think people understand. You can't be a 24-hour fitness or a Lifetime or a LA Fitness and just build this box and think it's going to last forever. the whole way people work out is evolving or changing. And I think what you just described is a possible future. But right now it's not. I mean, you can't, you got Mirror or Tonal. I don't know if you're familiar with those machines.
Right.
But but they're $2,000 and $50 a month. How many Americans can, or anyone can really afford that?
No.
Very, very few. Or how many people are that dedicated or that what's the word, disciplined to sit in front of a mirror, in their home for 30 minutes and exercise. I don't know many people that are that dedicated.
How long does your workout take?
I walk 10 to 20 miles a day, so I'm out there for 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the VR. How long does
the
that work?
VR, never more than 30 minutes.
Look, I don't know if I'm a contender, but please keep me in mind if you're bringing it to Australia. I think it's something that definitely will work, but I do believe the quicker people get their own VRs and they bring VR prices down, which they will eventually, that you could just have an app where people actually, like I said, can be having workouts while just sitting in their lounge room. And imagine that membership.
But see, you're fighting human nature there with these. Go look at Tonal or Mirror, these or even the apps. I mean, again, the kind of person that does that does not exist in any great number. It takes just you're fighting human nature. It's it's like I mean, that's my take on all that. It's just
the thing is why I think your centers are going to work, but why I think the future is like people not leaving their homes. I mean, we don't. Who would have imagine if you said 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that people will be delivering the food to your house now, and everyone's eating out of plastic containers and putting it in the microwave. Like nobody's cooking anymore. Like everybody's. So what I'm saying is, imagine turning around saying we can have you having a workout at home, and that's like home delivery. Home delivery.
Right. Yeah. But again, it's work. It's not eating.
Well, I think, but I see your point, but I think people find it more hard to leave their home and get to a gym. And I think if you can solve that problem, then maybe you got a bit more chance. But how do you feel and think about Gold's Gym today?
Well, it's different. I've tried to help them. I have, I mean, they respect the history, but I think they too need to move more into the future.
Okay. Do you like the name? You're the godfather of bodybuilding?
I've rarely been called that. I've been called the Yoda.
The Yoda. Okay.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Wow, Yoda.
And I've been called the wizard, like the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Because I would give bodybuilders, courage. I would give them, they had a heart and they had a brain, but they lacked courage. They lacked a mettle. So I think the best analogy is Wizard of Oz or maybe Yoda.
Wizard of Bodybuilding.
To tell people, you have the force, use it. You have a body and a mind, use it.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Who was the one that taught Obi-Wan? What was his name? The little creature.
Oh, well, that was Yoda.
Oh, Yoda. Yeah, sorry, Yoda. Of course, I apologize. What am I saying? I thought Yoda was what's his name? What was that Indian meditation guy? I forgot his name. But anyway, yes, Yoda. You are Yoda, 100%. And you've created a lot of downplay, right down to Luke Skywalker and so on. We're going to go over the body now, Ed. So before I go over the body, because we're going to get your training routine. How can
Stephen, I thought this would go an hour, and I'm already late by an hour. We've gone 2 hours.
Okay, well,
can we wrap this up?
Okay, let's go over the body quickly. If I give you a body part, can you tell me an exercise?
Stephen, I've got to go. It's 7:25 here, and
all right.
I'm an hour over my
Schedule time. No,
yeah.
you've given me plenty of time. Well, how about you promote yourself? Tell us where we can find your book. Where can we find your book?
My book is on it's on Amazon only. You can buy it's $11.99 in America, and the audio is probably free if you're a member of the book club on Amazon.
Okay. And what's one of your best mental health tips? If you could give someone a mental health tip, what would you give them?
Stay busy.
Stay busy is your mental health tip, yeah?
Yeah. Don't go out and walk. Don't sit home and brood. Don't stay. Get active. Don't do nothing.
Well, Ed, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know there was a few hiccups along the way, but we got there. I'm telling you, when you look back at this podcast, you're going to be saying these Aussie guys really put on a great show for me.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great.
All right, have a great evening. Thank you, Ed.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.